court know what we're getting into.
Mr. Mayor's not here. Do you want to wait or?
No, he's given me permission to drive the car.
All right, go ahead.
So just so the court knows where we're going, and it may or may not impact the ruling, we're going to be talking about a specific incident when Mr. Huber was a child in which he ran to try to help stop an explosion at a family gathering. That's what we're getting into. And it's not a general, he was a good guy kind of thing. It's a specific act to rebut that Anthony Huber was going to attack Kyle Rittenhouse, VC of Morris. He was going to try and save people from Kyle Rittenhouse. That's our basis, and I just want you to know where we're going. Legally, I think that's permitted.
Okay. Defense?
Excuse me, Judge. I would argue that's not a character trait for peacefulness, first of all. But if it comes in, then I'm going to ask the court under 90405 to allow specific instances to rebut that, which is allowed under 90405 sub 1. I have 2 criminal complaints involving Mr. Huber where he caused physical harm to other people. And I think if they're going to lay forth or try to lay forth opinion evidence on peacefulness, 90405 allows me to rebut that on cross-examination with specific instances of conduct. But overall, I don't think running to something is a character trait for peacefulness, in my opinion. So that's what I would ask the court to consider.
Okay. Well, I looked in the books, and Colonel McCormick section, and this, we don't update a lot of these things anymore. This is from 1990. The laws of evidence don't change that fast, although there's been change to this rule fairly recent. And I actually, one of the issues I didn't get to yet, and may not have to, is whether on the particular points we're going to talk about, whether the federal and Wisconsin rules are alike, because there's been somewhat of a change. But this is from 1992, and it's Section 193, Colonel McCormick, a well-established exception to the rule forbidding character evidence to prove conduct applies to homicide and assault cases in which there is a dispute as to who was the first aggressor. This exception permits the accused in such cases to introduce appropriate evidence of the victim's character for turbulence and violence. In response, the prosecution may adduce evidence that the victim was characteristically peaceful person. So it says that the accused can offer evidence of the defendant's character, of Mr. Huber's character for turbulence and violence. They haven't done that. They've introduced evidence of specific acts of Mr. Huber. And that sentence, the second sentence I read, is in response, the prosecution may adduce evidence that the victim was characteristically a peaceful person. So you're responding to something that hasn't been offered, which is character evidence about Mr. Huber. Now, if I read to the revision from 1974 of the federal rule, evidence of a pertinent trait of character of the victim of the crime offered by the accused or by the prosecution to rebut the same. And again, rebut would be in reference to the evidence of a pertinent trait of character, which has not been offered by the defense. Or character trait of peacefulness of the victim offered by the prosecution in a homicide case to rebut evidence that the defendant was the first aggressor. So it says evidence, it doesn't say character. So that second phrase seems to suggest that that the prosecution can offer evidence in a homicide case to rebut evidence that the defendant was the first aggressor. Wait a minute. Let me look at that again. And respond. Or evidence of the character trait of peacefulness of the victim offered by the prosecution in a homicide case to rebut evidence that the defendant was the first aggressor. So,
Are you reading that right, Judge?
I hope so, because I read it the first time and I questioned whether I had. Let's see. Or evidence of the character trait of peacefulness of Mr. Huber offered by the state in a homicide case to rebut evidence that Mr. Rittenhouse was the first aggressor.
I have victim was the first aggressor.
Well, I'm reading from, and I'll try one more time. Here, wait.
It's victim.
Wait. What?
We agree that victim was the first aggressor.
I'm going to offer as an exhibit here, just to say that my eyes are not failing that badly. You can look at it yourself. It says defendant. So much for that book. You can look at it yourself. It's there. All right. No wonder we didn't renew that book. You could make a big mistake with that. Let's read from my favorite, which is Judge Weinstein, who says, and this is at 701(3)(c) that we've talked about before. When the defendant offers evidence of the alleged victim's character, then the prosecution is entitled not only to offer rebutting evidence about the victim's character, but also introduce evidence that the defendant has the same character trait. So it starts off when the defendant offers evidence of the alleged victim's character, which hasn't been done.
That's the first part of that statute, not the second.
Well, the second part, if we're talking about this, I'm talking about 2B, which is going to be one, when they do these transpositions of the numbers. What are you offering it under? You tell me the statute you're offering it under.
I'm
I
offering
thought it was 1B.
90404 1B, but there's two provisions in there.
I know there are.
Okay, we're talking about the second, which is the character trait of peacefulness of the victim offered by the prosecution in a homicide case to rebut evidence that the victim was the first aggressor.
Right. And that is a more sweeping statement than the older material before. I think it's a 1974 revision. Anyway, there was disagreement in the other one I used was the Graham Handbook of Federal Evidence, and there's disagreement. So when I walked out here, I thought, well, I think I'm going to resolve the tie in favor of the state. Now, you're forewarning them that you have got some other crimes or some contrary evidence. I guess rebutting evidence that we might as well talk about now rather than have to excuse the jury again. Are you prepared for what the defense suggests they're going to offer?
Yes, I don't believe the incident in which an individual runs to try to help or try to save people brings in completely irrelevant criminal acts that have already been barred.
It's character traits for peacefulness is what they're getting into. I have two criminal complaints, one of which the defendant held a knife to his brother's throat. He put a knife to his brother's ear he called him. He said he would gut him like a.
He said what?
Mr. Huber told his brother that if he didn't start cleaning a room in their house, he was going to gut him like a pig. Mr. Huber's brother noticed a knife in Mr. Huber's right hand that looked like a butcher knife, 6 inches long with a green handle. Mr. Huber later on in the same incident threw a chair and some clothes across the room, threatening to kill his brother if he didn't clean. Mr. Huber then sat down with the knife in his hand and watched them while his brother and Mr. Huber made his grandmother pick things up as well. And Mr. Huber told his brother that if he stopped cleaning, he would kill him. Mr. Huber's brother then turned around and Mr. Huber put a knife to his brother's stomach, saying he was going to gut him like a pig. Mr. Huber's brother bent down to try to protect himself. Mr. Huber then grabbed his brother by the neck, dug his nails in, and choked him for approximately 10 seconds. He then put a knife to his brother's left ear. His brother felt the blade and believed his ear was cut. And then as he left, he told the people in the house, "I'm going to burn the house down with all you fuckers in it." That's what Mr. Huber had said in that instance. And that is charged in Kenosha County case 12 CF 1346. He has another criminal...
What was the outcome? And what was it, 12 CF?
12 CF 1346. I believe he entered a plea to strangulation and suffocation in that case.
Okay.
I have a 18 CM 509 case in which he kicked what I believe is his sister, Caitlin Hughes, in the right hip, causing her pain and causing her to fall into a nearby dog crate. So I would normally not move to admit those. However, if they're saying that this is a peaceful man, and if you say, Judge, running to this area to stop whatever was happening, it's not a fight or there's no violence, it doesn't sound like. But if you're saying that's peaceful, 90405 allows me to get into specific instances on cross.
I know that.
So,
I could respond. I believe 90405.
Just start over.
Sure. I believe 90405 allows specific instances of conduct of the individual being cross-examined, which we obviously cannot do. This I don't know how they would get this in. I guess.
Wait a minute. What do you mean? What do you can't? The individual being cross-examined will be the person who's giving the opinion. I tried this case, State against King, right here in this room when I was district attorney, 1974, 75. Mr. King shot his wife in the eye and killed her, and there was testimony. Well, the bottom line was that I was allowed when the an opinion had been expressed about the character for peacefulness of the accused, and on cross-examination I inquired, would your opinion change if you knew thus and so about Mr. King? And there was objection because it was a specific instance, and the Supreme Court said that was permissible inquiry because the opinion had been rendered, and the wealth of knowledge of the opinion giver was therefore subject to scrutiny as to how much information this person actually knew, because the character you're trying to present isn't limited to just an incident involving a fire at some point in time, but is limited to the entire character of the decedent. So my initial inclination would be this is probably admissible. Probably. And if you go ahead with the evidence, and you're welcome to do so, although the defense has also pointed out correctly that the character is for peaceableness and what you were talking about was more heroism. So, but I think I'll give you that much. But you're forewarned. I'm going to be taking another look at that King case because it's been a long time. But this sounds like something that he'll be allowed to go into.
Understand?
What do you want to do?
I will not submit the evidence.
You what?
I will withdraw that question and not submit the evidence.
You'll withdraw that question and?
I'm not going to elicit that testimony.
Okay, do you want Mrs. Hughes back on the stand?
Yes, there's still just a couple more questions. They obviously have to cross-examine her.
Okay. Are we ready for the jury? Would you come down, please?
Yes.
Mr. Schroff, say what?
Just putting your book back. I want to witness.
Good afternoon, everybody. We had some additional discussion on the issues that were pending, and it has been decided the state has decided to withdraw the question which was asked.
Settled in? Okay. Ms. Hughes, the night of August 25th, or into the morning of August 26th, when or how did you hear about what had happened to Anthony?
I got a text around midnight, maybe a little after, from Anthony's girlfriend Hannah, saying...
Oh, we don't need to get into the context of it. That would be
Okay.
called hearsay. And then did you ever receive any further communication about... let me ask it this way. When did you find out that he had died?
Much later. It was maybe 5:30 in the morning.
And how old was Anthony when he died?
He had turned 26 a couple days before.
Ma'am, I'd like you to look at there's an item in front of you which I've turned over. I'd ask you to turn it over to look at it. It's marked as State's Exhibit 44. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
This is a photo of Anthony as an adult, and Anthony as a child with his skateboard.
And are those pictures you provided to my office?
Yes.
Are those true and accurate copies of how Anthony looked at in childhood and as an adult?
Mm-hmm.
I'd ask that 44 be entered into evidence and published to the jury by being passed around.
Is there objection?
There is not.
Okay, go ahead.
That's all the questions I have. I'll give it over.
And he can do it.
I'll do it.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Did you have questions?
I have no questions for Ms. Hughes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you.
Carrie Ann.
Oh,
Oh. So,
would you raise your hand, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please be seated.
ma'am, could you please state your first and last name and spell them for the benefit of the court reporter?
Carrie Ann Swart. It's spelled K-A-R-I-A-N-N-S-W-A-R-T.
And Ms. Swart, do you know Joseph Rosenbaum?
I do.
How do you know Mr. Rosenbaum?
He's my fiance.
And is Mr. Rosenbaum still living?
No.
And did he die on August 25th, 2020?
His date of death is considered August 26th.
And before that date, how long had you known Mr. Rosenbaum?
Since August 3rd of 2019.
And after you met, how long did it take till you started a romantic relationship?
About maybe 3 days.
And had you known him before? You never met him before August 3rd?
No.
And where are you from?
I grew up in Illinois.
What would you and Joseph do together?
When Joseph and I were together at the beginning, we were homeless. We just spent a lot of time talking, getting to know one another, and laughing and joking around. He was a very animated person like that.
And is Joseph from Kenosha?
No, he is from Waco, Texas.
And do you know why he moved up here?
He moved up here to be with his girlfriend at the time and their child.
So does he has a child living in Kenosha?
Correct.
I would like to bring your attention to the day of August 25th, 2020. Did you see Joseph on that day?
I did.
And where did you see Joseph?
I saw him at the motel that we were living at.
Was it in the motel or outside the motel?
Outside the motel.
And had you seen, do you know where Joseph had been in the days prior to that?
Correct.
I'm sorry. Do you know where he had been in the days prior to August 25th? In the day or two prior?
Yes.
Where was he?
He was at a hospital in Milwaukee.
And do you know for sure how he got from the hospital in Milwaukee back to Kenosha?
I am not 1,000% sure. As far as I gathered from him and from the hospital, they brought him down here.
You didn't bring him back down.
No, I did not.
And he wasn't dropped off at this motel?
No.
So how did, if you know, how did Joseph, do you know where he was dropped off?
I believe he was dropped off by the transit center.
So right around here in downtown Kenosha. And do you know how he got to your hotel?
He walked.
I don't want to give the name because it's about how far would that be?
About an hour, 40 minutes. 40 minutes to an hour, I would say.
So the hotel is not in downtown Kenosha?
No, it's not.
Ma'am, can you bring the microphone a little closer? It's kind of hard to hear in here.
Is that better?
And when Joseph arrived at your hotel, what did he have on him?
You mean as in on his person?
Well, let me ask this way. What was he wearing?
He was wearing jean shorts, white shoes, and a red top.
Did he have a bandana with him at all?
No.
And was he carrying or holding anything?
He was carrying a plastic hospital bag.
And did you see the plastic hospital bag?
I did.
Did you see what was inside the plastic hospital bag?
I did.
What was inside the plastic hospital bag?
I saw socks, a miniature deodorant, like trial size, little toothbrush and toothpaste, paperwork, and an empty water bottle, like a plastic water bottle that was empty.
So when you're talking about a plastic water bottle, let me just borrow one from the detective here.
Yeah.
Do you mean like your standard 16 to 20 ounce plastic bottle, or like something you'd see maybe at a gym or on a bike, like a more heavy plastic?
No, it was a plastic bottle like that.
So a small, probably 16 ounce plastic.
It was
water bottle.
empty. There was no water.
And did you talk to him about this bag?
I did. I just asked him if he wanted me to throw it out, and he had said no, he was going to carry it around with him because of the few items that were in it.
About what time did he arrive at this, or I guess near this hotel?
I would say between 3:30 and 4:30.
And what did you guys do once he arrived?
We talked. We hadn't seen each other for maybe a week, and we just mostly talked about his and my relationship.
And this was outside?
Correct.
And then actually let me ask it this way. Do you know if he was able to procure any medication that day?
He was not able to fill the prescriptions he had because the Walgreens closest to us had been boarded up and closed down due to the chaos that was going on.
Do you know, if he had taken his medications that day?
He had.
Do we have the TVs on? Ms. Swear, I'd like to show you what is marked as Exhibit 26. Do you recognize that?
I do.
And what is that?
That is the plastic bag from the hospital.
And is it true that a few days ago I showed you a printout of this exact exhibit?
Yes.
And is that the plastic bag that you're referring to that he had brought back from the hospital?
Yeah, it's like one of those plastic bags that you just put your clothes and belongings in.
And in looking at the screen, does it seem like there's more items or fewer items or the same items, if you can tell, that he had when he was at your residence?
It appears to be the same as when I saw it.
Can you make out anything in this photograph?
I can make out. I think he might have had an extra shirt in there. That might be, and it looks like the water bottle on the side.
Extra what? I didn't hear what you said.
Shirt.
Shirt, thank you.
Do you know if Joseph Rosenbaum knew anyone named Kelly or Joshua Zeminski?
He did not.
I would object, that's speculation.
Sustained. Expect the answer. The witness would not be in a position to know the identity of all persons that the accused would have known, the decedent would have known. Thank you.
Do you know if he knew any people in Kenosha?
No, he did not.
Same objection. Not sure I heard the question.
The question was, do you know whether he knew many people in Kenosha? And she answered, pardon me?
That would be my objection would be the same.
Okay. It's along, generally, it's the same, would be the same ruling, except that it's like my asking if you know people in, many people in Topeka. That's really a bad example, but the bottom line is, it's a little bit different from the last. Did the decedent know an individual, a specific individual? Now he's asking her, did he know many people in Kenosha? And I think that she'd be in a better position to answer that, so I'm going to let that one go.
And you said no?
Correct.
Now, in your relationship, this about year, how often were you with him?
Every day.
And were there times he would go out on his own?
No.
Were you together all the time?
All the time.
And you said for a while you were homeless, and you said you were living in a tent?
Correct.
And you were together that entire time?
All the time.
Did Mr. Rosenbaum ever introduce you to someone named Joshua Zeminski?
No.
Did Mr. Rosenbaum ever introduce you to someone named Kelly Zeminski?
No.
Did he ever talk about knowing a Josh or a Kelly?
No.
Do you know Joshua or Kelly Zeminski?
I don't.
How tall was Joseph?
5'3".
How tall are you?
5'3".
And was Joseph a larger individual, build-wise? Was he bigger frame, smaller frame, medium frame?
He was medium, smaller frame.
Do you know if Joshua had any money on him when he was at your residence?
I'm sorry.
Do you know if he had any money?
Joseph?
Did I say Joshua? I apologize. Did Joseph have any money?
No.
Now, did Joseph spend the night there, or how did he end up leaving? Or what? Let me ask it this way: did Joshua leave? Did Joseph leave?
Yes, he did.
About what time?
He left at exactly 9:38 because I looked at my clock.
You looked at your clock?
My watch.
And how was your parting? How did you part ways?
It was really good. We were talking about things we were going to work on in the relationship. He was extremely excited to work on himself, work on some of the things he needed to work on, and when he left, he said he said that he would see me in the morning, and he was all excited, and I love you. It was a pleasant visit.
Was there any discussion of the potential for events downtown or the curfew or anything like that?
I did I did explain to him that things had gotten bad the last few days because he was not in town, and I did tell him explicitly not to go downtown.
And what is the next thing that you remember happening that night in relation to Joseph?
I got a phone call at 4 a.m. from the medical examiner.
And is that when you discovered that Joseph was deceased?
Correct.
Did Joseph own any guns?
No.
Did he have an interest or a hobby involving guns that you're aware of?
Not at all.
You never saw him reading magazines or articles or having a knowledge about guns?
No, he did not like guns.
What do you mean?
I'm going to object to this line of questioning based upon the court's prior ruling, motion and eliminate in this subject regarding firearms.
Sustain.
So what did you do once you received this news?
I fell to my knees and cried.
And then what, if anything, did you do?
I went on my phone and looked up on the Facebook Kenosha scanner page to see what the police call might have been about that night. And there was a video link, and I clicked that, and that's when I saw the video of Joe dying.
So you watched one of the videos of the shooting?
Correct.
And that evening, had you been watching, we've heard a lot of people are out there live streaming or filming or the news. Had you been watching any of that?
Nothing.
All right, so you had no idea that anything, you didn't know what was happening in downtown Kenosha until 4 o'clock
Till
in the morning.
4 in the morning.
Once you saw that video, what did you do?
I broke down, and I can't get that image out of my head, so yeah.
Did you go down to downtown Kenosha at all?
I did the following morning. My sister picked me up about 8 a.m. and we went over to Car Source, and there was the mark where Joe had been laying, and I put my hand in it, and my hand was wet with his blood, and that's again when I collapsed on the ground.
I'd like to show you what is marked as States Exhibits 42 and 43. Put them here, we'll look at them in order, okay?
Okay.
I'd like to show you Exhibit 42. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's a picture of Joe and I in front of Quick Trip.
And is that a true and accurate copy of a photo of you two together?
Yes.
If you know, do you know when in relation to August 25th that was taken?
I would say, in relation to when, probably a year prior.
Oh, so probably closer to when you first met.
Yes.
I would like to move Exhibit 42 into evidence.
Objection? I don't. Receive.
Let's take a look at exhibit number 43. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's a picture of Joe and I in the bathroom.
Okay. And is it a true and accurate copy of a picture of yourself and Mr. Rosenbaum?
It is.
And is that a picture? I'd like to move exhibit 43 into evidence.
Objection?
I don't have an objection.
Receive.
And if you know, where in your relationship was that taken time-wise? Was it?
This was about April of 2020.
Thank you. I'd like to publish the pictures by having them passed around the jury.
Objection. No. Go ahead.
I believe that's all the questions I have.
Judge, I know you don't want us to approach, but based on our earlier conversation, I'd like to have a conversation about specific areas of inquiry.
Let me ask you folks to step out for a minute. And yeah, when you finish looking at those pictures, then I'm going to ask you to step into the library for a minute. After you've done so, why don't you step in the library? And I don't think this will be lengthy. Yeah, go ahead. You had to work today instead of your usual leisurely job down the hall.
Do we want her here during the discussion?
I beg pardon?
Is it okay if she's here during our discussion?
She can step out for a few minutes, but I assume this isn't going to be lengthy. But we'll find out. If you're more comfortable walking around for a little bit, you can, but it's going to be just a matter of minutes, I hope. Mr. Tarathasi.
So, Judge, I don't want to. We had talked about this after openings, and I didn't want to step on any pretrial ruling. In the opening statement, there was a statement about Mr. Rosenbaum being in the hospital in Milwaukee. That was addressed with Ms. Ward on direct examination. I am of the opinion that simply stating he was in a hospital is a misrepresentation as to what actually was going on. Most people are at hospitals for physical ailments, to recover from whatever's going on. And I think if we're going to give the jury a clear picture of the hospital he was in, I think we have to be able to at least, I think it's appropriate now based on their questioning, and the questioning is evidence, so that in fact that he had been released from Aurora, their mental health wing, or their mental health.
Why is that not part of the hospital?
I'm not saying it's not part of the hospital, but I think it's reasonable to say that the majority of people believe that you're at a hospital for physical ailments.
I don't know that of course we get a jaded view because we deal with a larger percentage of people who are hospitalized who are there for mental or emotional disorders. So, but and you're not selling this, sir.
Well, the other area that she had mentioned, or that was talked about on cross-examination, was did he take his medications that day?
Yeah, that's another matter.
So it's irrelevant, I suppose, if he takes blood pressure medication or medication like that. I'm assuming, and she can come in and do this outside the presence of the jury, I'm assuming there's testimony about him taking his medications for mental health ailments. And I would ask, I don't have to go into it too deep, but I think it's relevant that I ask her what those medications were that he took that day.
You know, it could be, but what if she names a medication? Do we know why it was prescribed, what its pharmacological properties are, what the possible side effects are, what it's generally used for? There's all kinds of things, and I'm not going to invite the jury to speculate on that by just dropping in front of them, well, he was taking liquid penicillin. It means nothing to the jury. So I'm just depositing something for them to speculate about, and so I'm hostile to that.
If she knows what it's for.
Well, I'm going to let you have your voir dire to determine the extent of her knowledge.
Okay.
It is fair game because you did bring up about medication.
That's all I can ask, so.
Okay. Did you want to say anything?
I don't believe it's relevant. There's things in the reports that he had not taken medications that day. That's why I brought it up. I don't think it's technically all that big of a deal. I do believe it's. I don't think it's relevant. I think that Your Honor raises a good point, which is these psychoactive drugs, these benzodiazepine type drugs. I'm not an expert on them, or else I wouldn't be at this table. But one drug can be prescribed for a variety of diagnoses.
We're going to because for the very reasons I've said, I'm not just going to give them something that means nothing to them and then ask them to try to speculate as to what it's for. So ask her to come in and she can be examined. All right, go ahead, Mr. Sharofsky.
Good afternoon, sir.
You had answered some questions from Attorney Krause regarding Joseph taking medications that day.
Correct.
Mr. Rosenbaum.
Sorry.
Thank you.
That Mr. Rosenbaum had taken medications that day?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know what they were?
No, I only know some of them. I don't remember all of them.
Can you tell us the sum that you know he took?
Gabapentin was one.
I'm gonna stop you for 1 second. Do you know what he takes that? Did you know what he took that for?
Bipolar disorder.
Okay. Any other medications that you know that he took?
I know he was on an antidepressant. At that time, I don't know which one they had him on.
Okay.
And then something for sleep.
Okay, but to be fair to you, the only medication that you know by name was gabapentin.
Mm-hmm.
And you are telling us that you know he took that for his bipolar disorder.
Correct.
Okay.
Any question for the state?
Do you know that he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder?
Yes.
Did you go to doctor's appointments with him or anything of that nature?
Yes.
And how do you know that gabapentin was prescribed for that reason?
I was his emergency contact at the hospital, so they really called me and asked me what kind of medications I've worked in the past for him. And I told them, and they were in contact with me, letting me know what medications he was on, just like they called me that morning to say they were going to be letting him go. But that he had his medication.
So the hospital told you that day or the night before that they were gonna. Did they say they were prescribing it, or did they just ask you what they should prescribe?
At first, they were asking what they thought was best, and then I told them what had worked for him in the past, and the doctor or the nurse that I spoke with then explained to me what medications they put him on, and that was that.
How many medications total, if you know, was he taking? Or was he let me add it this way. Was he given at the hospital?
I believe he was given Effexor, gabapentin, and Seroquel for sleep. Seroquel.
Sorry, I'm just trying to look up these drugs. I'm not familiar with them. I have no further questions.
All right. Yeah, I think there's enough information that it's admissible. So, and the state did open the door. So, ask the jury to come back in, please.
Ms. Ward, I only have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
Okay. So you had mentioned on direct examination that you and Mr. Rosenbaum spent the day of the 25th together. Is that fair?
The afternoon, yes.
Okay. And you were asked by Attorney Krause if he had taken his medication that day, right?
Correct.
And Mr. Rosenbaum was taking gabapentin, is that right?
I believe so, yes. That's what I was told.
Okay. And you know, having been around him, that was for bipolar disorder?
It was to help with, along with the antidepressant.
And when you saw him, this plastic bag, you saw the picture of the plastic bag?
Correct.
One of the things that you mentioned that he had in there was a plastic water bottle.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you had said that plastic water bottle was empty, is that right?
Correct.
Did you find it odd that he was walking around with an empty plastic water bottle?
Well, when I saw the bag with the empty bottle, I thought it might have been garbage. I asked if he wanted me to throw it out, but he said because he had some clothes and some paperwork from the hospital that he was just going to hold on to the bag because that was all he had.
And he didn't ask you to throw away the water bottle, did he?
No.
He took that with him when he left you that evening, is that right?
As far as I know.
Now, you had said that normally you had spent a lot of your time or all of your time together.
Yes.
But you that night was going to be different. Is that fair?
Yes.
And you had told him not to go downtown.
Correct.
Okay. Why was that?
Because of all the unrest the days prior.
And you were concerned that he was going to go down there?
No, I was concerned that because the entire city was up in flames that something would happen to him anywhere. But specifically it seemed like it was downtown. So because he was coming from Milwaukee and didn't know all that information about Kenosha, I just wanted to make sure he knew.
Did you feel the need to go with him when he left?
No.
And did he tell you where he was going?
No, he didn't.
Did he, to your knowledge, did he have anywhere else to stay?
No, he did not.
So it was either with you or no other designated kind of place to go.
Correct.
And my last question, from where you were staying, how far is it to 59th and Sheridan?
I would guess an hour walk back, because it's about an hour from the transit to the hotel, so it'd probably be about an hour back to this area.
So if we walk, let's say we walk 4 miles an hour, I don't know that, but so it would be maybe 3, 4, or 5 miles, somewhere in there?
I don't know.
Okay, good enough. Ma'am, I don't have any other questions for you. Thank you for your time.
Any question?
Yes, please. Ms. Swart, did the hospital he was at today consult with you on medications he was going to receive?
Yes.
And why? So was this a new mixture of medications that he was on?
No. This was his regular medication that he had gone off of and had been back on for the last week or so, last week, 10 days before his death.
And he had been on that with his other medications altogether for a while?
Yeah, for the whole time I was with him, a year, yeah.
Nothing further.
I have no follow-up questions.
You may step down, ma'am. State. Would you raise your right hand, please? Yes. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Could you please pull that microphone really close in front of you and speak as loudly and clearly into it as possible? Could you state your name and spell your name for the record, please?
Sahil Kendry, S-A-H-I-L, last name K-H-I-N-D-R-I.
How are you currently employed?
I have my own dealership in Milwaukee,
What is that dealership called?
Car Planet,
Where is that located?
4020 North Green Bay Avenue.
Back in August of 2020, were you operating that car dealership in Milwaukee?
Yes.
Are you familiar with a series of car dealerships here in Kenosha by the name of Car Source?
Yes, sir.
How are you acquainted with those businesses?
Actually, I worked here up until 2015, and after that, I moved to Milwaukee.
When you say you worked here
Mhm.
up until 2015, where is here?
Kenosha.
Okay, at Car Source?
Yes.
After 2015, did you work at Car Source?
No.
Did you have any ownership interest in the company?
No.
Was there a time in which you were down here at one of the car sources around the night of August 25th, 2020?
Is that Monday?
That's Tuesday night.
Tuesday? I was actually here. We got a call on the first night of riots. We got a call from police department. It's actually my dad's dealership, so I was here actually before that too.
What is your father's name?
Anil Kendry,
How do you spell that?
A-N-I-L, last name, same last name, sorry.
What is his relationship to the Car Source dealership?
He's the owner.
You said that we got a call. Who is the we?
Police department called because my brother's phone was off, and I guess people, like around 4 o'clock, he put it on silent mode at nighttime, and then police department called around 6:30 to notify that riots happened or stuff like that.
Who did the police call at that time?
I do not remember. One of us.
Okay. When you say one of us, it's you
Either
and
my
who else?
dad, either me, myself, or my brother. I think more like my brother.
What is your brother's name?
Anmol Kendry.
And do you know what Anmol, can you spell that for us, please?
A-N-M-O-L.
What is Anmol's relationship to Car Source?
He's basically an inventory manager. For example, cars come from the auction, give it to mechanics, repairs, and then once they are detailed, put it on the lot. That's it.
Back in August of 2020, was your brother Anmol the head of the inventory for Car Source?
Yes.
You said there was a phone call around 6:30 p.m. Do you remember which night that was?
6:30 a.m. on Monday morning. Monday morning, yes.
Okay. I misunderstood.
Sorry.
What, if anything, did you personally do after that with regard to the issue of the phone call? Did you come down here?
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you normally live?
We were on KR,
That's
20 minutes away.
Okay. And when you say we were on KR, do you mean just
We live in the same house.
you, your brother, and your dad?
Yes.
Okay. So did the three of you come down at that point?
Actually, 4 of us, my mom too.
Okay. Did you all come down at that point?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes, sorry.
And what did you observe about the Car Source properties at that time?
A lot of cars were burned. The building, a lot of glass was broken. So, and then the police had a caution tape around it.
I've got a map up on the wall behind you there. There is a, next to the, in front of you, that bottle of hand sanitizer, there's
Oh.
a device laying next to it that's a pointer. Yes, right there. It's a laser pointer. And would you please, using that map, point out the location that you've just described as having burnt out cars and police tape around it?
We're on 5821. At least can somebody?
Sorry, what was that?
The address 5821.
So this is a map of the area of Kenosha along Sheridan Road?
Right on the top, right there.
Okay. And you're pointing to the car source location, which is on the northeast corner of the intersection of 59th Street and Sheridan Road. Is that fair to say?
Yes, right there.
Okay. In addition to that location, there are two other car source locations close by on Sheridan Road. Is that right?
No. There's 63rd Street as a second car source.
Okay. There's also a location kitty corner from the one you just mentioned. Are you aware of that one?
You mean car doctor?
Okay, that's what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
yeah, that's a repair center. Yes.
Okay. So if you could point out the one we were just talking about that you mentioned earlier. Okay. And then kitty corner across the street from that to the southwest corner, we have it labeled as car source, but do you see what I'm talking about?
Oh, right here.
Yes.
Yes.
What is that location?
Car doctor.
What is that?
It's our repair center that's owned by my mom.
Okay. When you were originally describing a location that had burnt out cars, that was the first one?
Yes.
Okay. You said you came down there at that point?
Yes.
This time in the morning? Which morning was it that you came down? Do you recall which day it was?
Monday morning.
Monday morning? So this was after Sunday night into Monday morning?
Yes.
What, if anything, did you do after that?
Cried.
Okay. What was the condition of the location that you've now described as car doctor?
Mm-hmm.
What was the condition of that location?
That was fine.
Did you see any damage to any property at that location?
No.
These locations that you've talked about, the car source at 59th and at 63rd, and then the car doctor, at that time in August of 2020, did you work for any of them?
No.
Okay. Do you go by the name Sam?
Sal.
Sal?
Yes.
Okay. Did there come a time on that Monday or maybe the following day in which you spoke to anyone, and I'm asking you personally, spoke to anyone about protecting those properties?
No.
There's an individual in the court who's been identified as Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah.
Do you see him here in court today?
Yes.
Have you ever personally spoken to that person?
No.
Have you ever personally texted or called or spoken
No.
on the phone with that person?
No.
Okay. At any point during that Monday or Tuesday process, did you ever speak with anyone about protecting any of those locations?
No.
Okay.
I actually don't even work there.
Okay. All right.
So.
I have no further questions.
So, Mr. Henry, how close in age are you and your brother?
2 years apart.
Okay, and you go by Sal. Does he
Yes.
go by Sam?
Yes.
Okay. So,
I don't know if this one's on. I have no idea.
I think, can you just turn around for a second and look at that picture?
Yes.
Okay. Is that you?
Yes.
That is you?
Yes.
Okay. I thought it was Sam, but it's you.
Yeah, that's me.
And can you tell me where that picture is taken?
63rd Street.
63rd?
63rd Street. Yes.
In Sheridan?
Yes.
Okay. That was taken on the night of the 25th. Is that right?
Tuesday evening.
now, you were asked, I think Mr. Bringer asked you if you can identify the person sitting at the table with the blue tie on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you had said that you've never seen him before?
Now I know his name,
Okay.
but I didn't know him before that.
Okay. If I told you that he was this guy right here, do you know that?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Binger asked you, if I have it right, if you had asked anyone to protect the property that night, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you had said
No.
to that? So these men are on your property, right?
It's my dad's, yes.
They're on your family's
Yes.
property.
Mm-hmm.
You don't ask them to leave, correct?
Especially when they have guns and they dress up right in front of me.
Yeah.
I was actually behind the silver Mercedes. There was a Hummer parked, which is our personal car. It had a brake line issue, and we parked that car inside, me and my mechanic. And there were a bunch of cars came in around 7-ish, and then the person that's right next to me dressed up right in front of me, like putting the fancy shoes on or something like that. And then he put some other, and then I was over there and I observed that they did that.
Well, tell me if this is right. You didn't think they were there to harm you, did you?
No.
Okay. And do you know anybody else in that picture?
No.
Do you know a gentleman by the name of Nick Smith?
Later I learned he was actually worked for my brother about for a week or two, I don't recall, because I live in I manage Milwaukee store, so I really don't even know his staff until when I come there, because I'm there all day.
Okay, so people in that photograph
Mhm.
have worked for members of your family in the past. Agreed?
Yes.
Okay. And only if you know. Do you know if those people in that picture were going into the car store's physical building?
Okay, the person with the white hat with the cross. Later, I find out that he was he used to work for my brother as an ex-detailer, and he worked for a short amount of time.
So my question to you is, do you know if people in that photograph were physically inside that building
No.
that evening?
No.
You don't know that, or they weren't?
In this building?
Yes.
No.
Were they in any other of the car store's buildings that your family owns?
Just the 5821 and the car doctor, which is a service center.
So they were physically present inside 2 of the 3 buildings, right?
I don't understand your question.
Well, you said you have 3 buildings on Sheridan Road.
Yes.
You said they were not physically present inside that building, right?
Correct.
But they were physically present in the 59th?
Who present?
Any of these people?
No. No. Only person which I can imagine, because the Nick, he probably inside because he worked as a cleaning cars. That's what he used to do.
Okay. Did he work there at the time, on August 25th?
No.
Do you know how he got in the building?
I do not know.
To get in the building, he would need a key, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know, only if you know, does your family's business give keys to people who no longer work there?
They don't.
So, to physically get into the building, would somebody in your family have to open the building?
Correct.
Okay. And do you remember what time you took that picture with those people on the screen?
Right before the curfew. I can't recall, 7:30ish.
And then did you leave?
Yes.
Okay. And are you telling the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, there was no conversation between you and any of those people about staying to protect the business?
No.
Nothing.
No.
No, there was not, or no, there
No, there wasn't.
No conversation?
No.
at
I
all?
think, I personally believe, I think the questions more you have is for my brother.
For Sam?
Yes, he goes by Sam.
Okay.
Because I don't even work there.
Sal, do you have a BMW?
Yes.
Do you remember giving Mr. Rittenhouse a ride from Car Source, what we call Car Source 2, which I think is the car doctor, to Car Source on 63rd? Do you remember doing that?
No.
You don't remember doing
No.
that day?
No.
But you do have a BMW?
Yeah. I have 10 more cars.
Okay. All right.
10 more cars.
Sir, thank you for your time.
Yep.
I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Kindry, there's going to be something up on the screen in just a second I'd like you to take a look at. It's, is there a way to zoom in on the text? Mr. Kindry, there's a message on the screen. It's a text message. I'd like you to read it to yourself, if you would.
Hi, Sam.
No, to yourself.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Have you ever seen that message before?
Yes.
When did you see it? The first time?
I think Thursday or Friday. My brother showed it to me.
Thursday or Friday of what week?
The same week.
Of the week of August 25th, 2020,
Yes.
when all this was happening?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes, sorry.
Is it fair to say then that this was a message that was sent or received by your brother, not by you?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have about that. Put up the photo again, please. Mr. Kindry, there's the photo that was just shown to you of you at that is the 63rd Street Car Source, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there's a group of people there. It's kind of hard. I'm going to ask you to try and go back in time to that moment. There may be some things you've learned since then. I'm interested in, at that very moment, as you're standing there with that group of people, did you know any of them?
No.
I got to ask, why are you in the picture?
I saw the guy right to the right of me dressing up, and I was so impressed. And he mentioned he's from ex-army, and I was like, I'd never seen that, and I normally saw these things on TV. So I'm the one who requested, can I take a picture? And I think somebody did. I can't recall who did it. And then I gave my phone number to Nick to send it to me, and then that's it.
Did he ever do that?
Yeah, he did.
Can you tell us which one is Nick?
The guy with the white hat.
Okay, that's the
With
white hat with the
X's.
red cross?
Yes.
And I assume before this night you knew who he was?
No, because I always work in Milwaukee, and my brother runs the Kenosha stores.
Okay. Let's put aside Nick for a second. Did you know anyone else in that picture?
No, sir.
What was your understanding at that moment in time what those people were doing there? Did you have an understanding?
A lot of cars came, I think 3 or 4, I can't recall which ones, and me and my technician parking our Hummer inside the shop because the brake lines were leaked, and I saw these people were dressing up and this, and I went over there and I observed that they're dressing up. For me, that was really impressive.
But again, my question is, what was your understanding of why they were there? Did you have an understanding of why they were at your place?
They were saying that they were here to protect Kenosha because and community service, and I was like, okay.
Did you hear any of them say they were specifically there for car source?
No.
You mentioned that there was a Hummer that you parked inside a shop. Was it this building shown in the picture?
Yes.
Okay.
All the way to the end.
Okay. We know this is the 63rd Street car source.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like you to take a look at the people in that photograph there. Obviously, you're next to them at 63rd Street. My question is, were you with any of those people anywhere else that night?
No.
Were you with any of those people at the Car Doctor location on the southwest corner of 59th and Sheridan at any point that night?
I recalled there were a lot of right across the street from a Car Doctor. A lot of people were walking by. I observed some people over there, yes.
Which of those people in the photograph did you observe by the Car Doctor? The one I'm going to use, you're calling it the Car Doctor. We actually haven't heard that up until today, but either way, it's that car source location on the southwest corner, or the Car Doctor location on the southwest corner of 59th and Sheridan. You know which location I'm talking about?
Right across the street from the main lot, right? Yes.
Which of the people in that photograph did you see or were you with at that Car Doctor location?
No one.
No one in that photograph?
No. I saw a lot of people, like from a Car Doctor. If I'm standing over there, across the street, they were passing, and then, yeah, I saw that.
But that wasn't anybody in this photograph?
Not that I recall.
Okay, thank you.
Cross-examination? Recross?
Mr. Kidry, I have one question. Are you aware that the people in that picture were at all three of your family businesses that evening?
No.
You were unaware of that?
No.
Okay. And
No, I was not aware of it. Or
Yeah, no, I'm not aware of it.
and you, at a little before curfew, you had left for the night, and that was your involvement on the 24th, correct?
Is it Tuesday?
I'm sorry, 25th.
Was it Tuesday?
Yes.
Yeah, that day, that's the last thing I did was took the picture, and then my brother came in with our mechanic because we heard people chanting over by the courthouse, and then my brother came with the mechanic. He dropped him off, and we're like, okay, let's go. We just left.
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Any direct? You may step down, sir.
Thank you.
What time? Let's see. We started at 12:30. Or we didn't start till 1 o'clock. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we were haggling. solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please be seated.
Good afternoon, sir.
Could you please bring that microphone as close as you can and speak as loud as possible into it? It's sometimes hard to hear in here.
Sure.
Could you state your name for the record and spell it, please?
Anmol Kendry. It's ANMOL. Last name KHINDRI.
How are you currently employed?
I work for Car Source.
What is Car Source?
It's a dealership owned by my dad,
What is your father's name?
Anil Kendry.
How long have you worked for your father's business?
Ever since we started,
When was that?
back in 2013.
Where is Car Source located?
We have 2 locations. The main location is 5821 Sheridan Road, Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the second one is on 6226 Sheridan Road, Kenosha.
Are there any other locations that are named Car Source?
No, sir.
Do you have your own business as well?
I just started a month ago.
Is that in any way related to Car Source?
No.
Are you familiar with a location called Car Doctor?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us what you know about that?
That's actually our inspection center because we have a lot of regulations that we have to follow for DOT. So every car that comes in has to be inspected, certified by mechanics. Doesn't matter if they're certified, but yeah, we just use it as well as we have a body shop and a detailing center there.
All of that occurs at Car Doctor?
Yes, sir.
Where is Car Doctor?
It's right across the street from 5821.
Sir, there's a map on the wall behind you there, and that is showing the area of Sheridan Road. On the north, at the top of the map, is 58th Street, and at the bottom of the map, on the south end, is 63rd Street. Right in front of you, by the microphone, is a little laser pointer. Would you mind using that laser pointer and pointing out on this map where those 2 Car Source locations are that you described?
I can't see that far.
If you need to get up and walk over there, feel free.
Please, thank you. Yes, I do see it now. Yes.
Could you please point them out for us?
This is our first location.
And I think you said first location?
Yes.
Okay, and where's the other one?
The other one is 63rd and Sheridan.
And then could you please point out the location that you have identified as Car Doctor?
Yes. It is right here.
And for the record, that is labeled on the map Car Source. It is located at the southwest corner of 59th Street and Sheridan Road. Is that accurate?
5912 Sheridan Road. Yeah, that's correct.
At any point around August of 2020, were you employed by or an owner of any of those locations?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yeah. We're going to be talking about the night of August 25th, 2020.
Sure.
That was a Tuesday night, 2 days after Jacob Blake was shot.
Okay.
Do you remember that time period?
Yes.
You've identified the 2 Car Source locations.
Yes.
On August 25th, 2020, did you work for those locations?
Yes.
What was your job there?
Move inventory.
What does that mean exactly? Did you say move?
Move, yes. We moved all our inventory to our storage units.
Where, you don't need to give me an address, but where were your storage?
Illinois.
Illinois?
Illinois, yes.
Let me back up a second just so
Sure.
I can make sure we're on the same page here. We've heard a lot of testimony and we've seen videos of I think think you called the first location
Yes.
at in the 5800 block of Sheridan Road.
Sure.
The cars were damaged. There was fire that burned almost all of them up.
Yes.
Correct?
That is correct.
Do you remember what night that happened?
That happened. They say it's Sunday night, but it was very early Monday morning.
You just described moving your inventory to a storage location. Why did you do that?
Because my dad asked me to, and we did have quite a few inventory. The main lot that got burned down, the 63rd location, was as well as jam-packed with full of cars.
Is it fair to say, sir, that after you had a large number of your cars destroyed at the first location, you decided to make sure that you got all of the other cars off the other location?
That is correct.
And that's why you were moving them?
Yes.
By the way, do you go by the name Sam?
Yes, I do.
Now, I just asked you what your job was at those two car sources, and I think you told me it was to move inventory.
Inventory management, in terms of buying vehicles from the auctions, getting them ready, get them transported, all that, yes.
Were you employed by that other location that you call Car Doctor also?
I am not employed by a car doctor, but I manage. Basically, we get our inventory ready via car doctor.
Why is that location owned and named something different than Car Source?
Because we don't sell cars here.
Okay.
Neither we have license to sell cars here.
When you say you managed the Car Doctor location, you seem to suggest that that didn't mean you were employed there.
No, I'm not employed. Basically, like I said, I manage inventory for Car Source.
Who, back on August 25th, 2020, who owned Car Doctor?
My mom.
And even though you weren't an employee of that location, you managed it?
Well, a lot of the inventory sitting there is from Car Source.
Okay. On the day of August 25th, 2020, which was a Tuesday, were you there at either one of the Car Source locations or at Car Doctor at any point?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I am going to focus in on Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. That was the night that Kyle Rittenhouse shot and killed two people.
Yes.
It is 2 days after Jacob Blake was shot, and I'm asking you on that particular day if you were at either of the Car Source locations or Car Doctor.
I was at the Car Doctor location.
What were you doing there?
We had few customers' cars that came back for service. We had two vehicles that needed major repairs. So we were pushing those cars inside the building.
Why were you doing that?
To save them from destruction.
Up until that point, had any of the property at the Car Doctor location been damaged?
No, sir. Sorry, could you repeat that question again?
Absolutely. I think you're describing that on Tuesday, August 25th, you and someone else were pushing some cars inside the building.
Yes.
What I'm wondering is, before that, had any of that property at that location, the building or the cars or anything else, been damaged?
On Tuesday or before Tuesday?
Before Tuesday.
Before Tuesday. Sorry, I have to think about it. It's about a year back. So you were asking Monday.
Well, I think you've testified that Car Source 1, the first
Yes.
location,
Mhm.
had been destroyed by fire.
Right.
What I'm wondering is, were any of the other locations, the Car Doctor or the other Car Source, burned or damaged in any way?
I'm sorry, I cannot remember. I don't believe so.
Other than pushing some of the customers' cars inside the building at Car Doctor, what else did you do at those locations on Tuesday?
We basically removed our mechanic tools because we didn't know what was going to happen, and cleaned up because there was from Monday evening, Monday night, you can say. Some cars did get damaged, a lot of glass everywhere, and our mechanics and detailers were basically clearing up the lot. Just clean up, basically, pretty much.
Other than what you've just described,
Hmm.
did you do anything else at either of the Car Source locations or at Car Doctor on that Tuesday?
On Tuesday, no sir. Majority of the time I spent was at Car Doctor.
Did you ever have any discussions that day with anyone about protecting or guarding either of the Car Source locations or Car Doctor?
No sir.
Do you know or have you ever heard of a person by the name of Kyle Rittenhouse?
Now I have.
On that day, did you have any contact of any kind? Phone call, a face-to-face discussion, email, a text message, anything like that with the person that you now know is Kyle Rittenhouse?
No sir.
Sir, I have a message that is up on the TV screen there. I would like you to please read it to yourself. Have you had a chance to read that message?
Yes sir.
Before today, had you ever seen that message before?
Before today? Yes sir.
When was the first time that you saw that message?
I cannot tell you exact time, but it was the day after the shooting.
The shooting occurred on a Tuesday,
Yes.
August 25th.
Yes.
Are you saying that you saw this message on Wednesday?
I am not sure. I cannot remember which day it was, but it was pretty close.
Where did you first see this message? In other words, did you see it on a device that you possess, or was it something on the internet, or
My
what?
cell phone.
Was this?
Sorry.
I didn't hear your answer.
Sorry, what was the question again?
I think you said my cell phone.
This message, yes, on my cell phone. Sorry.
Mr. Kindry, the message that's up on that screen, was that a message that you personally received on your cell phone at some point?
Yes, sir.
And I believe you're not sure exactly when it was that you first saw it. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
There is a timestamp on this message, and it says yesterday, 3:02 p.m. Do you have any idea? Does that help you at all to figure out when this was?
The day after, I'm assuming.
Well, I I get that, but I'm wondering if that helps you to understand which day of the week it was.
Wednesday?
Which would mean that this message came in on Tuesday?
Yes.
The message appears to be from someone who identifies themselves as Kyle. Do you know who that is?
I do not.
Someone sent this to your personal cell phone, fair?
Yes.
Do you have any idea how that person got your cell phone number?
Well, ever since Monday morning and Tuesday, I've given out my cell phone number, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, media, general public, my customers. They actually came by for condolences and stuff.
Do you remember giving your personal cell phone out? And I'll just point out, the defendant, Kyle Rittenhouse, is here in court. Put up the photo, please. There is going to be a photograph that I'm going to show you on the screen. Let me just ask first, Mr. Kindry, have you ever seen that photo before?
Yes, I have.
Were you there at the time that that photo was taken?
I was not.
Do you recognize anyone in that photograph?
My brother?
Other than your brother, do you recognize anyone else?
My ex-detailer?
What is that person's name?
Nick?
Can you identify him in that photo?
He's wearing a hat with a cross?
He is the gentleman with the white hat with the red cross on it?
Yes, sir.
Other than your brother and the detailer, Nick, do you know or recognize anyone else in that photograph?
No, sir.
The individual who is the second from the right, he is a male with a green shirt, a black long gun, and wearing a backwards baseball cap. There is an orange device or some sort of case right in front of him on the ground. Do you understand who I'm referring to?
Yes.
That is the defendant, Kyle Rittenhouse, as he looked on the night of Tuesday, August 25th. On that night, or at any point on that day, Tuesday, August 25th, do you remember having any contact with that person?
Sorry, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
While he's armed?
No. I'm asking if you remember at any point on that Tuesday having any contact with that person, either in face-to-face, over the phone, a text message, an email, any contact of any kind.
I do remember he came to me at Car Source at the first location.
When you say the first location, is that the one in the 5800 block that had been
Yes,
damaged
sir.
by the
Yes,
fires?
sir.
Tell us what you remember about him coming to you at that location.
It was pretty normal. Just like everybody else, they were talking to us and that you're gonna be fine and this and that. You will come back from this. His response was the same, like the way he said it. He talked about how he can help us with fundraising the business, and I'm sure he asked for my phone number, which I gave it to him, just like I gave it to the media or any other individual who was nice and polite. And I don't remember him giving me his phone number, neither I asked for it.
Did you talk to him about protecting or guarding either one of the Car Source's locations or Car Doctor?
I did not.
On Tuesday, August 25th, did you talk to anyone about guarding or protecting either of the car source locations or the car doctor?
I did not.
You've identified your person that used to work as a detailer, Nick, in that white hat with the red cross.
Yes.
So this is August 25th, 2020. Was he still working with your family companies in
Not
any
at
way?
all, sir.
But he had done so in the past?
That was quite far back.
On that day, August 25th, that Tuesday, did you talk to Nick Smith, that individual?
I did not.
Did you provide keys to anyone on Tuesday, August 25th, so they could get in or out of any of the car source locations or car doctor?
I did not.
Did you offer money to anyone?
I did not.
Please let me finish.
Sure.
Did you offer money to anyone in exchange for them guarding or protecting either of the car source locations or car doctor?
I did not.
Did you give anyone permission to be inside any of the buildings on either car source location or the car doctor location on Tuesday, August 25th?
I did not.
Did you give anyone permission to guard or protect any of those three properties?
I did not.
On that particular evening, did you know that there were people there with guns who had taken upon themselves to guard any of those car source locations or car doctor? Did you know that night that any of that was going on?
I did not.
I assume there came a time after that where you learned about that. Is that fair to say?
The next day, yes.
How did you learn about that?
News channel.
Was that the first time that you knew about any of that stuff?
Videos. Yeah.
I want to go back for a second to that text message that we showed on the screen earlier. Did you ever respond to this text message at any time?
I did not. I didn't know who it was.
One second, please, sir.
Sure.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take a break, folks. Please don't talk about the case. Read what your testimony account of the trial. We'll see you in about 15 minutes. calling the jury.
Okay, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Hello?
Would you come down, please?
Yes.
You may be seated. Everybody's here, I think. Mr. Sharofsky.
Mr. Kibbe.
No, sir.
Do you have a concern that if you allowed or gave permission to those armed men in that picture to be on your property with your permission, that you could be sued for that based on what happened?
I did not allow anybody, neither I gave anybody permission.
It's not my question, sir.
Okay, sorry.
My question is this: do you have concern that if you allowed armed men to protect your property and someone was shot at your property, that you and your family could face a lawsuit for that?
Could you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Thank you.
Do you have concern?
Mhm.
Well, I'll start with this. You, after watching the videos, you understand that Mr. Rosenbaum was shot on your property, correct?
Yes.
My question to you is this: do you have concern that if you allowed armed men to protect your property, and one of those armed men then ended up shooting someone, that you and your family could be sued for that?
No, sir.
You don't have any concern about that?
No, sir.
How much inventory from the 24th, the 23rd and the 24th, in terms of loss of money, how much money did your businesses lose in terms of damage to property?
I cannot give you an exact number at this moment.
Can you give me a ballpark?
Sorry, I cannot remember at this moment.
More than 100,000?
Yes.
More than 250,000?
I do not know, sir.
So, is this like your family? Is this the business that feeds your family?
I work for my dad.
Okay.
Yes.
And you don't have, and you're the inventory manager?
Yes.
And you don't know what your loss was from those fires?
I personally never calculated it. My dad does the money part.
Did your if you know, did Car Source and Car Doctor, did they have insurance for those vehicles that were burned?
Yes.
Okay. Now, on the 20, do you know Dominic Black by chance?
I do not.
You know Nick Smith?
Yes.
Do you know a man by the name of Justin Hamilton?
Ex-mechanic, yes.
Okay, and Mr. Smith and Mr. Hamilton both worked for you, is that right?
In the past, yes.
And just letting you know, Mr. Black, Dominic Black, has testified in this case already. Okay? If Dominic Black said that you gave him permission, along with the other people, to be those armed men to be present on your property on the evening of the 25th, would that be not true?
I did not give anybody permission.
So Mr. Black would be lying about that.
Objection.
Typically, the witnesses are not permitted to testify as to the truthfulness of statements made by others. However, the witnesses, you can rephrase it in such a way that the witness can be made aware of the testimony of the other witness and then asked for the truth of it. But not the truth of the other person's testimony, the truth of the matter.
That was already done.
Well, it was, but I'm going to let him.
Okay, Judge, fair enough. On the morning of the 25th, I'll strike that. On the 24th, do you know, did Nick Smith and Justin Hamilton come to your properties and help try to put out those fires?
Which day was that?
The 24th.
Which day of the week?
Monday?
Hear you, sir. Oh, what day of the week?
Monday. Monday the 24th.
Now, could you repeat that question, please?
On Monday the 24th, did Nick Smith and Justin Hamilton come to your properties, the Car Source properties, to help put out those fires?
On which property?
Any of the properties.
Do you know the time? Like, sorry, I can't understand that question.
You don't, I just want to make sure, you don't understand the question of whether or not somebody came to help put out fires at your property?
On Monday, you said?
Yes.
You said, what was the name of the people?
Nick Smith, he worked for you at one point, yes?
Years back, yes.
Justin Hamilton, he worked for you at one point, yes?
Years back, yes.
Did they come to your properties or property and help fight or put out the fires from the 24th?
At the location of Car Doctor.
So, yes, they did.
Yes. I will have to look at the video or photograph. I cannot remember that far back. I'm sorry.
Were you there attempting to put out any of the fires on your property?
No, sir.
Did you call anyone to assist, to try to help, or did you just let the property burn?
What do you mean by that? I'm sorry.
Did you do anything? Did you call anyone? Did you ask for help? Did you physically do anything to try to stop
I
the
called
fires?
911 several times, yes.
Did anybody show up?
I do not know.
Okay. Nick Smith and Justin Hamilton, if you know, they showed up at least one of your properties to help put out the fires, correct?
I will have to look at the photo or a video.
Okay.
Sure.
Do you recall asking them to help put out the fires at your property?
I did not ask anybody.
No?
I did not ask.
And on the 25th, did you the morning of the 25th, did you call Nick Smith again and ask him for help that day?
I did
Which
not.
would be Tuesday?
I did not.
Okay. So, if I could just have you turn around. So this is, we have referred to this as car source number 1. If you know this, this is what I refer to as Ruther High School. That's a school right there, right? I'm sorry, you have to talk into my phone.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And on the morning of the 25th, this building right here, this school, had suffered graffiti damage. Do you know that?
I do not.
You weren't at the property across the street from it earlier that morning?
I did not stay there.
I didn't ask you that. I asked, were you there and did you see graffiti on the school?
I saw graffiti on the roadblocks. I did not see it on the school.
Okay. Did you see that morning Kyle Rittenhouse cleaning graffiti off of that school?
I did not.
You had a conversation with Kyle Rittenhouse that morning of the 25th, correct?
I remember that I had basically when I got there with my parents, people reach out to us pretty much.
And when you say we got there, you're talking about
At car source.
The 5912?
Yes, 5821.
Sorry, 5821. And you had a conversation, according to your statement, with Kyle Rittenhouse.
Which, yes.
Okay, you gave a written statement on September 11th to a Detective Cypress?
Yes.
Remember that?
I do remember that.
Okay. And you had a conversation with Kyle Rittenhouse, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Kyle Rittenhouse, he had offered to help, according to your statement, and fundraise for your business. Is that right?
He wanted to help with fundraising the business.
Right. You told that to Detective Cypress.
Yes.
And you gave him your phone number because he asked for it. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, was there any damage to the car doctor or to car source on 63rd? Was there damage to those properties on the 24th?
Which was Monday?
Yes.
I'm sorry, it's just over a year. Monday. Okay, Monday. Okay, please go on with the question. Sorry, could you repeat that?
Was there any property damage to the car doctor or the car source, what we call car source 3, on the 24th?
On the car source on 63rd, no damage.
Car doctor.
No damage.
So, all right. So, 2 of the 3 properties at that point had not suffered any damage from the riots.
There were a few windshields crack on the inventory itself at car doctor.
The buildings were okay?
Yes.
Okay. How about on the... Did you go down and check your property on the 26th, which would have been the morning after the shootings?
Morning after. Which location?
Both of the properties that had not been previously damaged.
Yes.
Was there any damage to either one of those properties on the 26th?
At car doctor.
And what was that damage?
Towards the back, where the body shop is.
What kind of damage?
So when we arrived on a car doctor, went inside, our mechanics were there. He actually pointed out, hey, you want to come see this?
Now when you say he, we're talking about your mechanic.
Our mechanic.
Can you have to tell me what he said? Can you just tell me what he showed you?
Yes, that's what I'm about to so he took us towards the back, towards the building where there's a body shop. So it's a 4-car garage, and what we observed was there's the body cars, a lot of bumpers, a lot of taillights, headlights. All those cars in the back are for body repair. So there is pickup trucks. They're usually rust out, and there are a few of them, but there was one by the garage.
So the damage was to the, if I have what you're saying right, to the inventory.
Well, no, I didn't finish it. So basically, there was a lot of glass on the back door. I can't. And the garage doors, the rectangular tiles that are see-through, they were stretched. They were fallen inside the shop. So it seemed like it was a break-in.
Okay. Do you have? I'll ask it to you this way. On the morning of the 25th, you went to the properties to make sure that they were okay from the night before, the 24th, right? I'm talking about Car Doctor and Car Source 3. You checked the properties, make sure they were okay?
Monday or Tuesday?
Monday night into, Monday, I take that back. Tuesday morning, you checked the properties and they were okay?
Yes, sir.
Now, at Car Doctor, you have a ladder, is that right?
Not that I can recall.
Do you have a ladder at any of your properties?
No, I don't think so. I don't believe so.
Have you seen videos of, on the night of the 25th, of people at your property?
I have.
Okay. They're on the roof, right? Yes?
Yes.
Do you have a way to get to the roof?
They made a way.
Oh, were you there?
No.
So I want you to tell me what you know, not what you're guessing.
Yes, that's
okay?
what I was about to, when I brought up the pickup truck. On top of the pickup truck has a cab. Okay, we had about you can say, at that time, probably 250, 280, less than 300 tires in the back shed. And we keep them in the shop or whatever. So they are stacked on top of the pickup truck, on the cab, towards the roof.
So it is your belief that these men climbed up on the tires and then climbed up on the roof? That's your belief?
I just told you what I saw the next day, on Wednesday morning.
And you never provided, is it your testimony today, you never provided a ladder to anybody to get on the roof of Car Source?
I did not.
Do you know if your brother was there that night prior to curfew, right? On the 25th?
The 25th.
If this helps, I can tell you there's a picture of him with these men.
It's better with the days, Monday and Tuesday. Sorry, I just have a hard time with the dates.
Do you know if your brother gave them a ladder?
No.
You don't know?
No, you don't.
He did not.
Were you there?
At Car Doctor?
At Car Source at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night on Tuesday.
On the 63rd Street?
Yeah. I'll ask you this way. When did you leave the properties for good? On the 25th.
Before curfew.
Okay. When?
It was in between 7:30, 7:45.
Did you see those people that were armed at any one of those properties on the 25th?
No, sir.
Did you see that? You didn't see them like standing with your brother in that photograph?
I did see that.
So you saw
Did not. I did or did not?
But in the photograph, I do see people.
So you saw those people on your property on the evening of the 25th, Tuesday,
Yes.
with your brother.
No.
You just saw them there without your brother.
When I got there, I was ready to take off. I had to just lock up the building and heading home before their chaos and all the protest starts.
And those people were at your property.
Those people,
The people with guns, they were at your property, right?
I saw a lot of people on Sheridan Road armed.
I'm asking you specifically if you saw people with guns on your property before you left to go home on Tuesday.
I'm sorry, I cannot remember. I know that I was asking my brother to leave.
So you were down there to pick up your brother, right?
No.
You were down there to...
I got a ride from my mechanic. He dropped me off, and I came in, locked up the store, and we left.
Agree that the next day, meaning the Wednesday, there's no damage to any of the doors on your building in terms of no locks busted, none of that stuff, correct?
On which location?
Any of them.
Car doctor, there is damage.
To the locks?
To the back. To the glass, to the garage doors.
Right, but you don't know who did that.
I do not know.
Okay. And have you watched the video of people, armed men, walking in and out of the car source that evening?
Yes, I have. I have.
You've seen that?
Yes.
Okay. Did Nick Smith have a key to your building?
No,
Did you give him a key that night?
I did not.
How about Justin Hamilton?
No, I did not.
No?
No.
But you saw on the video them walking in and out of your store.
I cannot even tell who is who or who these people are.
That wasn't my question. My question was you saw people walking in and out of your
Yes, I did.
store. Did you ever ask Kyle Rittenhouse if he could help protect your business on Tuesday the 25th?
I did not.
You never asked, and you never asked Nick Smith, and you never asked Justin Hamilton.
No, I did not.
I'm going to ask you to this way, and I'm not trying to be offensive the way I say this is. Were you just willing to let your property be damaged on the 25th?
After seeing the destruction, there's nothing I could do.
So you kind of resigned yourself to the fact that whatever was going to happen on that day was going to happen. Is that what you're saying?
I do not know.
Sir, have you provided interviews as it relates to the damage to your property?
I may have.
Okay. I'm looking at one of those interviews right now, and what I want to ask you is if this sounds about right to you, and I'm taking it off of your interview. 137 vehicles were burned on your lots. Does that sound about right?
If that's what it says.
That's not the question.
I do not know the numbers off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I don't have the.
Would you challenge that it was 137, or does that sound about pretty close?
Close.
$2.5 million in losses. Sound about right?
I don't know. My dad handles the money part of the business.
Your family had to hire a lawyer because your insurance wasn't going to cover those damages.
That is not true.
That's not true? So if you said that you're working with a lawyer to convince your insurance company to cover at least some of the damages, that's not true.
I did not have to hire an attorney.
In this interview, did you tell the writer, our insurance company is finding their way out so they don't have to pay for all this arson? Did you tell him that?
Well, there was no acceptance from the insurance company, so there's...
My question to you was, did you tell this interviewer that our insurance company is finding their way out so they don't have to pay for all this arson? Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I do not remember.
You don't remember saying that?
I do not remember. And to add to that, they also said that I was dead. That was in the media too. So I do not.
Well, I'm
remember.
asking what you said. Okay?
I do not remember, sir.
You do not remember having that conversation?
I do not.
You don't dispute the $2.5 million?
I cannot tell you. I don't deal with the numbers. My dad does. I'm an inventory manager, sir.
The only person quoted in this article, your dad's not quoted, it's you. Has your dad given interviews, do you know?
He does not speak much English.
Okay, so the numbers came from somewhere, and your dad doesn't speak English, and your brother doesn't work there, so it's you, right?
But I do not remember that. I'm sorry, it's been over a year.
Okay. So when you testified under oath that you had insurance for all of this, that's not true, right?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
You've already testified under oath that you had insurance for all of this. That's not true, is it?
We do have insurance. My dad does have insurance on all the locations.
But not for those vehicles due to arson, correct?
I'm not understanding the question. I'm so sorry. Could you repeat that for me?
I asked you, one of the first questions I asked
Sure.
was about your loss. You had said you have insurance. My statement to you is, you don't have insurance for all the damage done to those vehicles from arson. Isn't that true?
We do have insurance.
For arson.
Answer the question which was asked.
For ours. I do not know.
Did you see your brother give 4 men a ride in his BMW from the 59th Street address down to the 6226 address? Did you see him giving?
I did not.
No? I don't have any other questions for you. Thank you, sir.
Redirect.
Yeah.
You may step down, sir. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Can you please state your first and last name and spell them for the benefit of the court reporter?
Officer Eric Widener, E-R-I-C-H, W-E-I-D-N-E-R.
And Mr. Widener, how are you employed?
As a City of Kenosha police officer.
How long have you been a police officer?
Going on 22 years now.
And what is your current assignment?
Third shift patrol.
And were you working on the evening of August 25th, 2020?
Yes.
What were your general duties that evening?
I was assigned patrol.
So the City of Kenosha was patrolling on that night?
Yes.
And where were you stationed, or what were your activities, let's say at the beginning of your shift that night?
Just normal patrol, taking calls if a call came out for service, staying in the area of the downtown area, uptown area, and just taking normal calls when someone called 911.
What do you mean by staying in the downtown area or uptown area?
In the outskirts of the heavy congested area that was having the unrest.
So that was part of your duties, was to stay around there, but then if another call came in, domestic violence or burglary, you'd go to that call?
Yes.
At any point were you directed to go to the area of 63rd Street and Sheridan Road?
Yes.
Why were you directed to go there?
I am an evidence technician also, and I was called to go and process a shooting scene.
So what is an evidence technician?
We have special training above and beyond what a normal patrol officer has, and we respond to calls of service for like burglaries, anything that needs fingerprinting, shootings, shots fired, suspicious deaths, stuff like that. Kind of like what everyone knows as a CSI, but we do it kind of as on patrol.
Now, what you said you were there to process the scene, what does that mean?
I was told there was a shooting scene, and they wanted me to process it, photograph it, document it, and collect evidence.
At that point, how many details about the shooting were you given?
None. Just that there's a shooting, and a subject was down.
Can I ask you to bring the microphone closer to you?
I was
Just
trying to lean forward.
You can move the microphone, actually. It's
Okay.
that might be easier.
All right. Much better.
So what is the first thing you did when you got to this? The scene is a car source location, is that correct?
Correct. It's a car place at 63rd and Sheridan.
What is the first thing you did when you arrived on this scene?
I spoke to multiple supervisors on the scene, asked them what the circumstances were. The person who was shot was not on scene anymore, so I asked questions about that. And then I was walked towards where they thought the scene was.
And then what is the next thing that happened?
Eventually, I started locating some evidence, and I started photographing the scene.
Where did you first locate evidence?
The first evidence I located was spent shell casings or fired shell casings in the street, about the 900 block of 63rd, which is west of Sheridan Road.
Now, there should be a laser pointer up there. If not, I can give you one. I think there's one in front of you. Could you just indicate on the map where you found those casings that you just referred to? So you're pointing to the 900 block of 63rd Street, sort of towards the end of that block in front of the car source?
Yes.
And could you tell what kind of shell casings those were?
Those were 40 caliber.
Are those the type that be normally fired by a handgun?
Typically, yes.
And those were actually in the street?
Correct.
What's the next thing you discovered, or what did you do next?
I placarded them with little number placards for the photographs 1 and 2, and then as I walked east towards the car lot, I found another shell casing that matched the other two on the parkway, which is between the sidewalk and the street. Typical houses would have grass, but it was a business, so it was concrete there.
So that was another 40 caliber shell casing?
Correct.
That was still not on the lot of the car source?
No. Parkway.
What is the next thing that happened?
I walked into the parking lot and I observed what appeared to be blood on the concrete of the parking lot. Closest to would be the southeast corner of the building.
Can I get that? What exhibit number are we on? 47. These are just scene photos. Can I get the first photo should be exhibit 47. Not sure how to turn these on. Is it this one? Oh, we're good. Officer, if I could direct your attention to the screen to exhibit 47, what are we looking at here?
So the building I'm talking about is to the left on this picture, and there's a group of 6 cars. That's where most of my evidence I found reference the shooting happened, and that's where the blood was found also, possible blood.
All right, so is it fair to say that if you were standing where the person that took this picture, which was I presume you, did you take this picture?
Yes.
Are you facing Sheridan?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So is it fair to say that as you were taking this photo, you're looking directly at Sheridan Road and then what is now Freighter behind Sheridan Road?
Correct. I'm facing east.
Okay. That's a more succinct way of putting it.
Towards the lake.
And so in the middle of this area of cars is where you found most of the evidence in this scene?
Correct.
Can I have the next exhibit, 48, please? Officer, what is this?
Again, the eastbound picture, just a little bit more close up to the cars.
And exhibit 49? Is this the building?
This is the building I was talking about. It's the very south end of the building where the group of 6 cars were parked.
And the next, I believe, would now be exhibit 50? What is this, sir?
It's a picture of 2 cars. The silver car, I believe there's a number of placards next to it. Those should be, one of them should be where the possible blood is. The other one should be shell casings I found, fired shell casings.
So that moisture on the concrete there, is that related to the crime scene or is that something else?
I couldn't determine what that was.
Now, you talked about placards. There's a pointer there on top of the, no, I'm sorry, an actual wooden pointer.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just go and point out what you mean by placards?
I believe those placards were 4 and 5. Both of those placards were fired shell casings.
And what kind of shell casings were they?
223 Remington Aguilas. Aguila, A-G-U-I-L-A, I believe.
You move to exhibit 51, please. At this point, I'd move Exhibit 47, 48, 49, and 50 into evidence, and I would ask for 51 on the screen.
Objection.
I don't.
Proceed.
Is this one of the placards you were discussing?
Correct.
And that's one of the 223 rounds?
Correct.
How many rounds of 223 ammunition did you find?
That night I found 2, which is labeled right here in this picture.
Those are the 2 that you found?
Correct.
Are you aware if any others were found of 223 ammunition?
I was told multiple days later that some other ammunition was found.
And do you know where it was found?
I was told under a car. That's all I heard.
Did you look under every car for casings?
Yes, I looked under cars.
With a flashlight or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the oblique angle with the flashlight. If you put it on a side angle, the shell casings usually pop out at you because they're on a different plane. I didn't see anything under the cars.
And you're doing this around midnight, after midnight on that evening?
Correct.
Yeah, is that some of the blood next to it?
No, the blood's off to the left from the picture.
If I could have the next exhibit, number 52. And that's just a close-up of the same placard.
It's a medium shot of the same placard, and eventually I'll do a close-up of it before I pick it up.
Next exhibit 53, please. What are we looking at here?
Right, number 5 is at the bottom of the screen. That's one of the fired shell casings that I was just talking about. And then number 6, which is up on towards the top of the screen, towards the other vehicle that's parked, that was the possible blood that I found.
And would that be all that darker colored area there?
Well, it's hard to see from that picture, but it's definitely where the placard is. I'm not sure about the black color on the right. I don't know what that is.
And is it fair to say that when we're looking at this picture, we're sort of looking in the midst of those group of 6 cars, kind of in the middle of them?
Yeah, I guess, yes.
Okay. So what is the next thing that you did?
I most likely took a medium and close-up of the possible blood on the ground, and then I noticed there's a black hooded, like a full face mask that was to the right or to the north of this picture right here.
So this is just placard 5, that's one of the casings?
Correct. So this one you can see placard 7, which is that mask that I've located there. It appeared to be fresh, like someone just dropped it there. It had no weathering on it, nothing like it's been there for months or anything like that. Not sure if it had anything to do with the case that we're on, so I just labeled it.
So as we're looking at this, are you facing south?
Yes, I'm facing south. I'm standing at the corner of the building, the southeast corner of the building.
And you're looking right at where the shooting happened?
I'm looking at where my located evidence was found, yes.
So we're kind of looking into the middle of that group of 6 cars?
Correct.
And did you change any of the lighting or do anything with the lighting from earlier in the evening? The lighting that was on that parking lot?
No.
About how long after the shooting were you processing the scene?
I cannot answer. I don't remember. We would have timestamps of that of our dispatch, but I don't remember, to be honest with you.
But it wasn't like 4 in the morning at this point?
No.
So it would have been relatively close to when the incident occurred?
If I had to guesstimate, I'd say an hour.
Okay. I believe this is exhibit 54.
Is there objection?
No.
Okay. That's it then, right? Yes.
Okay.
So 51, 52, 53, and 54, I'd like to move into evidence. What is then the next thing that you discovered as you processed the scene?
I believe I took a crime scene video of it, and then I collected all the evidence, and then I proceeded back to the police department for the evidence.
Did you find another casing on Sheridan Road?
I believe it was on 63rd Street, west of all the other casings. So the 40 caliber casings I initially talked about on 63rd Street, those were more towards a house that was labeled 915. I found another one 2 houses away, which is 925 63rd Street, and that turned out to be a 9mm casing, fired casing.
Now, in terms of your activity that evening, is that the extent of your activity at this crime scene?
Before I left, there was a possible shots fired going on in a park west of us, 1 block west of us, and I went over there to attempt to locate evidence also.
Best of your knowledge, that had no relation to this crime scene?
I believe it had nothing to do with this crime scene. There's other shootings going on.
Is everything been moved in? Yes. Okay. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Officer, can you tell me, when you arrived on the scene, did you locate a hospital bag with any items in it?
What kind of bag are you talking about here?
I'm sorry?
What kind of bag? Like
It's
a
only been
grocery bag
described-
or?
It's only been described as like a clear hospital type bag.
I did not locate that bag, no.
How about a fire extinguisher?
Not that I can recall.
So in a case like this where it's a homicide, and you're there relatively quickly after the call comes in, I'm assuming, right? Is that
I'm
fair?
not sure how long it took me. I was not one of the first responders. It took me a while to get there from the first responding people.
And I think you had said you do kind of like CSI type of work. That's how you described it?
For layman's terms, yes.
Is the area like taped off that night, do you remember?
It was.
And so you're looking, and I believe you, I'm not questioning you. You're looking under cars for spent casings, and you understand that at a time later, a couple days later, there were more casings that had been located. Is that right?
Correct.
Did you have anything to do with the collection of those? Any involvement in the casings that were found after?
No, I did not.
I don't have anything else. Thank you. Thank you.
Any redirect?
If you remember, what parameters or what were the perimeter of the crime scene that you were examining?
With the crime scene tape, you mean?
Yeah.
When I arrived on scene, the crime scene tape was put up by other officers who responded prior to me. It was on the very south side of 63rd Street, extended from the alley, which is west of the building in question, all the way to Sheridan Road. It crossed Sheridan Road onto the Kenosha Hospital property, went down the sidewalk northbound towards the other shooting, I guess.
So it was a very large scene.
Yeah, it was taped off. Typically we'll do that. We'll have the crime scene of the main area of the crime scene, and because of large crowds or unruly crowds, we'll expand it farther than normal.
And is it fair to say that there had been if you know that there had been a crowd around this crime scene earlier in the evening?
Once the tape was up?
No, before the tape was up.
Yes, there's large crowds.
And unless you're told specifically it relates to the crime, is a empty fire extinguisher or a hospital bag something you would typically collect?
Unless I determine it's part of the crime for the investigation, then I would collect it. I had no knowledge of a hospital bag or a fire extinguisher being used in this incident.
Nothing further.
Any questions?
If it was there, would you have put that little card on it, the hospital bag?
I would have to determine if it had something to do with this. If it's just blown there from the wind or something like that, then no. If it had no relation to what was actually happening, unless someone would have told me there's a bag involved in this, then I'd be looking for a bag, obviously. We're right across the street from a hospital. It could have been a wind. I don't know. I don't remember seeing a bag.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing on that.
Give me a step down, sir.
Thank you.
Easier to go about that way, actually.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Do, Your Honor.
Please be seated.
Officer, I know it's tough because you guys have those big belts on, but if you could just try to maneuver that microphone as close to you as possible and try to speak into it because the acoustics are not great. Okay. Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Jeffrey Van Wie, V-A-N, capital W-I-E.
And officer, how are you employed?
The City of Kenosha Police Department.
How long have you been a police officer?
For 18 years.
Did you become involved in the investigation of a shooting involving a Kyle Rittenhouse?
Yes.
And how did you become involved in that case?
I was handed over evidence by Detectives Howard and Antoranium to process and actually secure into evidence.
And how did you go about obtaining that or starting doing that?
So Detectives Howard and Antoranium met me by the police station. From there, the evidence was brought into our evidence room in the police station, and it was turned over to me.
And was this on August 26th?
Yes.
Do you recall the time?
It was roughly 9 in the morning, maybe a little before 9 in the morning.
And do you know from where these items had come?
No.
So what is the very first thing you did?
First thing I did was I was given 2 rifle boxes, so I actually processed the rifles and took photos of them.
Now, do you have any special training to do this type of thing?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
I'm a certified evidence technician for the last 15 years.
And what does that mean?
That means that as far as crime scenes go, that I would, whenever any different kind of crime scene goes, or I would go respond to that scene and I would process that scene for evidence, searching for whether it's DNA or fingerprint evidence or blood evidence. Also just processing evidence. So like if a detective has an item that he needs processed for DNA, then I would actually take that and swab that correctly.
And how do you swab that correctly?
As far as the rifles went, I actually took 3 swabs from each rifle. The swabs I obtained were from the trigger, from the pistol grip, and then from the barrel has a guard around the barrel, so I swabbed the guard of that barrel because that's the most likely place if somebody's holding that weapon that their hand would be on that guard.
Why would you not, or why didn't you swab the actual barrel?
So when I was given these rifles to process, I was instructed to process them. There was at that time, for my knowledge, there was no reason to swab the barrel.
So you swab the areas where someone is most likely to actually grip or hold the weapon.
Correct.
And that generally would not be the barrel of a gun.
Correct.
So what did you do? What's the first weapon that you encountered?
It was a rifle box that was written. It had writing on it, said Kyle Rittenhouse.
So what did you do with that?
With that one, I opened the box up. I wound up taking the serial number down, the information out from the weapon, photographing it, and then swabbing it in those areas I just mentioned for DNA.
Did you take photos of them?
Yes, I did.
And then what is the next thing you did in processing this evidence?
That, once I finish with that, it gets secured up, and then so I tape up the box, and it's all.
All right, so you weren't here, obviously, but a couple days ago we had an evidence box and it was opened, and it was taken out of there. So you would have at first sealed it up in that box. You were the first one to do that?
That's correct.
All right, and then you would put that into evidence?
Yes.
And then you would come back to the next thing?
Correct.
All right, so what's the next thing that you did?
Next was an additional rifle box, which was labeled Dominic on it.
And what did you do with that?
The same process. So I wound up swabbing the same areas on that weapon for DNA, photographing it, and then securing it, taping up and securing it.
Now I'm going to go back to the box that had Kyle Rittenhouse written on it. Did you ever look into you said there was a rifle. Was there anything else along with the rifle?
There was also a sight, or a scope, if you will, inside the box. It was not attached to the rifle.
Was there anything attached to the rifle?
A black sling.
And was there any ammunition or a magazine or anything like that?
Not in that box. There was a separate bag that had a magazine in there with live ammunition.
And did that have one or two magazines?
Had one.
And was there any markings on that box? Or bag?
I was informed by the detectives that was from the rifle belonging to Kyle Rittenhouse.
So what did you find when you looked at that magazine?
The magazine had live ammunition in it.
Do you know how much live ammunition was in that magazine?
The magazine itself was a 30 capacity for 30 rounds, and there were 22 live bullets in there, unfired bullets.
And were they all the same brand, or were they different brands?
They were all the same as far as the caliber goes, but there was multiple different brands inside there.
And what was the caliber of these?
There were 223s.
And did you take a DNA swab of that piece of evidence as well?
I did a swab of the actual magazine, so I took a swab off each side of the magazine, a DNA swab.
One swab on both, or one
swab on each side of the magazine.
Okay. And then did you package up the magazine and the live rounds?
So I wound up taking each unfired projectile out, and then in the order they came in, I secured them in boxes. So like the first unfired bullet that I ejected out of the magazine, I would put in a box and label it 1. The second one 2. So I did that for all 22 rounds, and then took photos of each one.
Took photos of each one?
Correct.
Did you do the same thing with the rifle that was labeled Dominic?
There was no ammunition with that, no magazine.
But you did the same process in terms of the DNA swabbing?
Of the actual rifle, yes.
And then what do you do once you take these swabs?
So the swabs, I wound up securing. The swabs actually go in a little swab box, and I secure them in an envelope, something that can breathe, that's breathable, and then that gets taped up, and I secure those in a locker into evidence.
Was there any other evidence that was not related to these firearms that you packaged or logged that day?
There were a few other items that was handed, yes. There was some clothing, there was a cell phone, and then a backpack which contains some medical supplies.
Did you do anything with the information that you got off of the firearms?
So we do with every firearm that we log into evidence, we have a form called an E-Trace form, and what that is we work with in conjunction with like the ATF as far as having a database and a record of every gun that we log into evidence. So with both of those rifles, I wound up contacting on the telephone an ATF agent who actually did a quick, what they call E-Trace form with me in order to log that into the database.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Cross-examine.
Good afternoon, officer.
Afternoon.
So, on the 26th, you basically assist these two detectives, Howard and Antaramian, in terms of doing this swab. Is that right?
I did. They handed off the evidence to me,
Okay.
but I did the swabs by myself. Yes.
Understood. Well, and your report indicates that at KPD, evidence detective Antaramian advised he needed 2 rifles processed. Did he tell you, he being Detective Antaramian, the areas that he wanted swabbed by you?
He did not.
Who made that decision?
I did.
At that point, do you know anything about the case?
Not a whole lot, no.
Okay. So, you mentioned that the trigger is swabbed, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I know we don't have the pistol or the firearms here. So I'm going to, when you say the barrel guard, is that the area here where my left hand would be if I was holding it like this?
Correct. So the barrel of the gun has a plastic, if you would, guard around it, and that's the part that I swab.
Okay. And then the pistol grip, is that the area?
Right. That's where your hand, your palm would be. So if the trigger's here, the pistol grip is where your hand is holding onto.
Okay. So when the DNA swab is done initially, obviously you're looking for potentially forensic evidence on that gun, right?
Correct.
But you don't know the areas specifically that you're supposed to be looking at. True?
Unless I'm otherwise told, when I process whether it's a gun or a rifle, it's going to be typically the same areas that I would obtain swabs from. If there was something else for some other reason or rationale that I would have to do things differently, then I would do things differently. But normally to swab a rifle or a handgun, just about all our evidence people would choose the same areas.
Okay, and I'm not
Right.
I'm not questioning that. What I'm asking is, at some point, do you learn more information about this case?
I'm sorry, as far as...
I'll ask it to you this way. Did any detective come to you and ask you to do additional swabs on that firearm now that more information about what had happened was out there?
No, they did not.
If somebody would have asked you to swab based on information they had, and they said to you, Officer Van, we would like to know if there's DNA on the actual barrel of that gun, could you have done that?
Absolutely.
And that wasn't done, was it?
No.
The firearm that you, I think you opened it that had it said Kyle Rittenhouse on it?
Correct.
Okay. There was a sight on that gun, is that right?
There was a sight. It was not mounted on it. It was in the box with it.
Okay. If you remember, and I'm going to use the wrong terminology, so I'm going to ask for your help. That sight didn't have a laser that projected out where, for example, if I was holding it, I could put a dot on your chest, correct?
Not to my knowledge, but I never actually messed with at the site at all, so I never turned it on. I never really viewed it at all. So
Okay. And this testing was done the day after the shooting, right?
the 26th. So if the shooting was the 25th, then yes.
Okay. Thank you for your time, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
Are you aware if the defense attorneys asked for further testing of the gun?
I was not informed of any other further testing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? You may step down, sir.
Thank you. State Officer Moretti.
Anybody need a very short break? Don't look at me like that. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to get that microphone right in front of you by any way you can. Perfect. What's your name?
Officer Moretti.
And can you please spell your first and last name for the benefit of the court reporter?
Yes, the first name is P-E-P, and my last name is M-O-R-E-T-T-I.
And how are you employed?
The City of Kenosha Police Department.
And how long have you been with the City of Kenosha Police Department?
A little over 12 years.
And were you working on the night of August 25th, 2020?
I was.
And were you with anyone that evening in your squad car?
Yes, my partner that evening was Officer Krieger.
And what were your general duties that evening?
Patrol.
And what is that? What do you mean by patrol?
We were assigned to an area throughout the city. We were in the kind of downtown area, so we have different areas that we patrol. They're assigned numbers, and we're in what we would consider Area 20, which would be 60th, Sheridan, and other areas around there.
Now, was there anything out of the ordinary going on that night in that area?
Yes, there was civil unrest.
So, was your duty to patrol the civil unrest, or other things, or both, or how was that working?
It was a combination of both. So we had patrol areas that we were responsible for doing our normal routine patrols, but then we also had to respond to fires that were taking place, civil unrest, and anything that would be actively taking place that would need a response.
At any point that evening, were you made aware of a potential shooting?
Yes, Officer Krieger and I were at 60th Street and 11th Ave, and we heard gunfire, and then a few moments after that, dispatch advised that they were receiving calls that there were shots being fired in the 6300 block of Sheridan Road.
So let me ask this way, you guys were in a squad car?
We were actually, I believe, out on foot at that point at 60th and 11th, and we could hear gunfire in a close proximity to us.
So then what did you do?
We re-entered our patrol vehicle, and then we responded toward the sound of where the gunfire was coming from, which would have been roughly the 6300 block of Sheridan Road.
And who was driving?
I was.
And then Officer Krieger would be in the passenger seat?
That's correct.
So you were at 60th and 11th. Did you just drive right down 60th Street?
Correct. We proceeded east on 60th to Sheridan Road, and then I made a right turn to face south on Sheridan Road.
Now, you had lights and sirens on, or how were you operating, if you remember?
I don't recall if I had our lights active at that time.
So what happened when you get to 60th and Sheridan, you turn right onto Sheridan?
Correct. So I turned the vehicle to face south on Sheridan and observed a large crowd of people. There was a lot of screaming, yelling. There was appeared to be a person laying in the roadway up ahead of us. There was active gunfire throughout the entire city. There was still sounds of gunfire taking place, and we received reports of injured people that needed assistance in approximately the 6300 block of Sheridan Road.
So that would be south of you, and you'd be pointed in that direction.
That's correct.
Now, in this sort of situation where there's potential, this ongoing violence, what are you trained to do? What are you trying to do at that point?
So for a situation like that, the first thing that we would do is if there's an active threat, we're trying to stop the threat. And then after that, it's life-saving measures to try to render aid and preserve life at that point.
So were you going to do that from 60th and Sheridan, or were you trying to get closer?
So we were trying to get closer, but information was put out over the radio that there was rifle gunfire taking place, and we're in a standard patrol vehicle. There's no ballistic protection on our patrol vehicles, and our vests at that point were only rated for handguns. And we weren't equipped to head into what we believed to be an active shooter at that point with the equipment that we had with just the two of us being there. I noticed there were armored vehicles behind us, so I reversed our patrol car and moved it off to the side so that the armored vehicles that were equipped to handle something like that could pass us.
So you were waiting for the Bearcats, as they're sometimes called, to go past you, and then you were going to follow them into the scene.
That's correct.
So what, if anything, happened next?
I'm sorry? Sure.
What, if anything, happened next?
The Bearcats, I believe, began to pass us on the left, so we were in the curb lane, and I believe there was, I'm not sure how many there were, but a few Bearcats, I believe, passed us, and then there was at that time, unknown white male approaching us in the roadway toward the front of our patrol vehicle.
And now, as you're sitting here, do you know who that unknown white male was?
Yes.
Who was it?
Kyle Rittenhouse.
And you had never seen him before?
No.
And when you see this unknown white male, who we now know as Kyle Rittenhouse, what do you observe?
He had a rifle that was slung and somehow attached to his body. He had his hands somewhat similar to this, and he was approaching us in the roadway toward the front of our patrol vehicle. My partner and I, Officer Krieger, gave him multiple commands to get out of the roadway and step to the side so we could proceed and try to get to where we'd observe people ahead in the roadway that needed assistance.
Now, were you giving these commands, were you shouting out the window? Did you have some sort of system you were giving commands? How are you giving these commands to Mr. Rittenhouse?
I recall Officer Krieger yelling out the passenger window. We had our windows down so that we could hear gunfire that was taking place to try to determine how close it was to us if anyone were to approach us from behind or the sides. And I believe at one point I used our squad's PA system, which is a loudspeaker that has a microphone.
And what you said, was that directed at Mr. Rittenhouse or the crowd in general?
At Mr. Rittenhouse. We were giving him instructions to get out of the roadway and essentially get out of our way so we could get to where we believe the problem to be.
As Mr. Rittenhouse was approaching the vehicle, were there other people in your way, or was he the primary person blocking you from going down there?
At that point, he was the only one in the way.
So you indicated that Mr. Rittenhouse's hands were kind of up?
That's correct.
And you said he had a rifle?
Yes.
Did you think that might be the person who could have been involved in the shooting?
At that point, no. In my prior experience in law enforcement, when somebody surrenders to us, they will generally put their hands up, but then they will take a further step and generally drop to their knees, or they will lay in a prone position and make some type of further action. They'll usually follow commands when they're attempting to surrender. I've never in my career had somebody put their hands up and continue to advance and disobey orders from us to not advance on us.
And were there other people out that night that had rifles and firearms?
We were surrounded all night, all week by, there was probably more people armed with weapons than not throughout that entire course of the civil unrest.
So seeing someone with an AR-15 wouldn't necessarily mean much to you at that point?
At that point in time that night, no. I had encountered throughout throughout that entire shift, like I said, I probably spoke to more people that had pistols and rifles and baseball bats and you name it than not. And there were also, I couldn't even tell you how many people came up to me throughout the night that had a rifle and would come up to say, hey, I'm not trying to do anything, I just want to talk to you. And the advice that my partner and I gave everybody that night was, if you're a supporter of us or you're here to try to help, go home. There's a curfew in place for a reason, and being out here is only causing more problems. It's harder to tell who's there to be a problem and who's not.
Now, you mentioned curfew. Did you have the ability to write curfew tickets?
We had a system in place for taking people into custody, and then they'd be issued citations, yes.
And were you doing that to everyone that was breaking curfew, or were there guidelines that you were given?
No, that would have been physically impossible with the amount of people that were out there.
So, who, if anyone, were you to give curfew tickets to?
I don't remember exactly what the direction was, but it was something along the lines of just the most severe incidents, or if we were to obviously observe a felony taking place, then we would act on that. But anything that would be more minor, we didn't have the capability or the manpower to address everything that happened in front of us.
So you couldn't give curfew tickets to everyone. What about if you observed, let's say, property damage that did not threaten someone's safety?
That would just have to stay in the stack until we were able to get to it.
So that you had a priority list that evening of things you would respond to?
Correct.
Now, a shooter, where would that be in the priority list?
That would be at the top of the list.
So this man we now know as Kyle Rittenhouse is approaching you. There's commands over the PA. There's commands being shouted. What's the next thing that happens?
He approached the passenger side of our patrol vehicle. With him disobeying the commands and being armed with a rifle like that, I drew my service weapon, and Officer Krieger deployed pepper spray because it became clear and obvious that he was not going to go away, that he continued to just advance on us and disobey commands.
Now, you say you were still driving the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
So when you draw your service weapon, what does that mean? What did you do with it?
So anytime we're confronted with somebody that's armed and that could be a threat to us, it's not uncommon for police officers in this country to be ambushed. And given everything that was taking place, a war zone is the only way I could describe it. We were surrounded, the city was burning and on fire, and we were just outnumbered and completely surrounded. So with his advance with that weapon, we were in a stop position at that point, and we're waiting for him to get out of the front of our vehicle so we could advance. And as he approached the passenger side, I was able to use my right hand to withdraw my weapon and then keep my left hand on the steering wheel.
So did you point the weapon, or did you just kind of point it at him, or did you just have it ready? What were you doing with it?
I would imagine that I would have had it pointed at him, because somebody advancing on us with a rifle, not obeying commands at that point, would be taken as a threat.
Now, were you on patrol the night before?
I believe I was.
You don't remember for sure?
I worked continuously through all of our civil unrest, and I don't believe any of us had any days off, so I would say that's fair to assume.
If you remember, and you may not, is it fair to say there were more fires and property damage the night before than on this Tuesday night?
That's correct. Through that period of things, I was there from the start of the civil unrest with the protesting, and long before we had anything set up or in place. I was there for the start of it and through this incident.
Is it fair to say that there was a more presence of Bearcats and National Guard and things on this Tuesday night than the Monday night previous?
Yes.
Now, you said you drew your weapon and Officer Krieger deployed pepper spray. Were you able to see if the pepper spray had any impact or hit Mr. Rittenhouse?
Not sure if it made contact with him, but his deployment of the pepper spray had the desired effect, because he began, I think he continued northbound at that point and got away from us.
So then what's the next thing that happened?
I continued southbound on Sheridan Road, and we located a subject in the roadway, Mr. I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, Gage.
I believe it's Grosskreutz.
Grosskreutz. We encountered him, and his right arm was badly damaged, and he needed urgent medical care.
So what did you observe as you found Mr. Grosskreutz?
There was a large group of people. Everybody was screaming. There was a lot of people running around screaming. The one Bearcat had pulled up, and they loaded Mr. Grosskreutz into the Bearcat and requested an escort out of the area to the nearest hospital.
Did you provide that escort?
We did.
And were there still a lot of people around that scene?
Yes, there was people everywhere.
And did you hear any additional gunfire or anything like that?
There was constant gunfire. That was one of the things that when we first encountered Mr. Rittenhouse that didn't set off any alarms for us as far as him being a potential shooter in this incident, was that there was still gunfire erupting around us while we were still out on Sheridan, so we thought there was still an active threat.
So when you found Mr. Grosskreutz, you were concerned there was still an active threat out there?
That's correct.
So after you provided the escort with Mr. Grosskreutz in the armored vehicle, so you go to and where do you go?
We escorted the Bearcat to Frederick South Kenosha Hospital, which was right there. We were actually in front of it. So we got them around to the emergency room entrance, and I went inside to let the medical staff know they had a probable trauma coming in due to the amount of damage that was done to his arm.
And then what's the next thing that you observed or did?
After that, there was a security supervisor for KMH that had called in an officer down, and that triggered a response from us to try to locate an injured officer, which there wasn't. They just couldn't contact one of their security personnel, and they weren't able to find him, so they falsely called that in.
So when you heard injured officer, you thought one of a law enforcement officer?
Yes, when dispatch advised there was an officer down at the hospital, we assumed it was a law enforcement officer.
Now, we have heard testimony that there was a lockdown at the hospital. Was that part of this?
The hospital, I believe, was either going into lockdown or had already been locked down. We were greeted by, I believe, a security guard at the entrance that gave us access and saw us pull up.
What's the next thing you saw or observed?
There was a male by the name of Giovanni Garcia. He was very panicked. He was in a hospital room, and he kept stating that he wanted to leave.
We don't need. Yeah. I wasn't seeking that testimony, so I'm just asking what you saw and what you heard, not what people are telling you.
Okay.
So there was a Mr. Garcia you dealt with.
That's correct.
And then, did you have any dealings with Mr. Rosenbaum?
I did.
And what were your dealings with him?
A Dr. Bornis had advised me that Mr. Rosenbaum was deceased from his injuries, and he was moved to room 18, I believe it was, in the ER. I photographed his body and then collected the clothing that he was wearing that night.
Do you have any training in evidence handling or anything of that nature?
I have standard training for evidence handling. I'm not an evidence technician, but I do have standard training for handling of evidence.
So collecting evidence generally is one of your duties as a patrol officer?
That's correct.
Did you stay with Mr. Rosenbaum's body at any point, or what did you do?
I did.
You did?
I did.
Until when?
I don't recall what the duration was, but I did secure him into a body bag, and then I spoke with a medical examiner about him being deceased, and I was advised to place him in the morgue at the hospital there because they were overrun with tasks and other things and didn't have somebody to send there. So I was able to place his body into the morgue there for safekeeping.
So what did you do with all the clothing and belongings from Mr. Rosenbaum?
I bagged them as I was trained to bag them individually, and then I later secured those into an evidence locker in the the public safety building.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Cross-examine. Yep.
I just want to go back to something you said. You said your body armor at the time could not withstand rifle shots?
That's correct.
And do you know why that is?
It's not rated for rifle rounds. Our body armor that we wear has a rating that comes along with it, and there's an explanation with that rating of the type of rounds that it's capable of stopping, and a rifle round is well above what our body armor was capable of stopping.
If you know, is that because it's rifle rounds are full metal jacket rounds, or do you know why it would be that way?
I'm not sure what exactly the classification was of the ones that we have, but there is a set that they have for the type of round, the caliber, and the amount of force that comes with that round, and the ability of the vest to stop those rounds.
So a rifle round could have penetrated your vest and actually done serious damage to you?
It would have gone straight through it like I was wearing nothing and caused severe damage to me or my partner, yes.
Thank you.
So, Officer Moretti, you had on direct described that scene as a war zone, is that right?
Correct.
And it was like that, tell me if this is right, on the 23rd, evening of the 23rd, 24th, and into the 25th?
Yes, there was escalating damage and violence that was taking place over the nights.
And in all of your time as a officer, have you ever been involved in nights like that?
Nothing to this magnitude, no.
And I think you said more people were armed than not armed?
Correct.
Can I ask you this? So you were working on the 24th and the 25th?
Yes.
You had said there was more damage, more fires on the 24th than the 25th. Is that right?
That would be my feeling, yes.
Were there more people protecting buildings that you saw on the 25th than on the 24th?
I did observe more people that were armed out in places. I don't know exactly what their alleged function or intended role would be. I didn't have many conversations with people that were out there. We did notice some heightened security.
Okay, so my question was, more people that were protecting the businesses, the less fires that you saw. True?
I don't know that I would equate those two, no. The city was...
Well, there was more fires on the 24th than the 25th. That's what you said, right?
I don't have a report written that would indicate the amount of fires that were started, and I would just be going back and using memory to try to remember. I'm not certain the totality of the fires or how many fires were started and what nights they were.
Okay. So your report indicates that, so you hear gunshots coming from the south, is that right? At about 11:49ish on the 25th?
I believe so, yes.
And are you able to, through your training and experience, decipher the type of firearm that has been fired, like a pistol, a shotgun, a rifle? Can you do that?
On occasion. Sometimes it's harder to decipher different calibers, but sometimes you can.
Were you able to decipher what you thought you heard on the 25th at about that time, at about 10 minutes to midnight?
At the time, I'm not sure what thought process I had at that point. There was just gunfire erupting, and there was multiple types of gunfire going off simultaneously. So I would say it'd be fair to say that yes, some of it sounded like rifle fire and some of it like pistol fire.
Can you bring it up? What's the number? Exhibit 5. Officer Moretti, I'm going to show you Exhibit 5. If you can tell me, is this vehicle right here the vehicle that you're in?
From this picture, yes, it appears to be.
Okay. And you're in the driver's seat of that vehicle?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you see at that point, you know that's Mr. Rittenhouse now, right?
Correct, now, yes.
Do you see him coming toward you at that point?
From our vehicle?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I know you had said you were outside your vehicle. Is it fair to say at that point you're back in your vehicle?
At this point, yes, because we had just turned the corner.
Okay. All right. And now he has his hands above his shoulders, kind of walking toward you. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Stop them! Hey, dude right here just shot them! Dude right here just shot.
Can you hear those people yelling that guy just shot someone?
At this point in time, no. No, we cannot.
Down there. That dude just shot them right there. That dude right here.
And are you backing up to let the Bearcat through, or are you backing? Is that the reason you're backing up?
At this point, with watching this video, it would probably be dual purpose here. So I did want the Bearcats to be able to get around us. And as you saw twice there, Mr. Rittenhouse did manipulate his rifle as he's walking toward us, like in this part right here. His hands are not above his head. They're actually down toward the rifle. So that's where my partner and I were going through the process of wondering what this is.
Okay, very good.
Someone injured straight ahead.
Now at that point, is that you yelling, "Get out of the road"? Do you hear that?
Yes, I heard it. I'm not certain if that's Officer Krieger or myself. I believe both of us were yelling at him to get out of the road.
Okay. And you had, I think you had said, Attorney Krause said, normally in your experience, people who are surrendering, they'll put their hands up, but they'll do other things, correct?
Correct. They'll usually get down on their knees or prone themselves out and follow instructions that we're giving them.
Right. You're not giving him any instructions to get on his knees or lay down.
That's correct.
Okay, so when you say people do things like do this and then lay on the ground, that's done at your direction most of the time.
Not necessarily. I've had quite a few experiences where when somebody does have a desire to surrender to us, they will do that on their own because they're aware that they're armed and their intent is to surrender and they don't want something else to happen. So.
And it's also when police officers are dictating to them what to do, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Sit down, hands behind your back, or whatever it is that you
Correct.
want.
Yeah, instructions will be given at that point as well.
Fair. So, at this point, it's your, and I'm not being critical of you, it's your testimony that at this point, you have no idea that Mr. Rittenhouse has done anything wrong.
That's correct.
Do you ever make contact with him about him having a firearm in public?
No.
Do you ever want to get any information that he might have as to why he's walking toward you with his arms up like this?
Yes, that would be something that we would do secondary. As I'd stated earlier, when you still have gunfire that's actively taking place, there's victims that need assistance and there's still potentially a threat that's got to be stopped. So those take priority over collecting names and information at that point.
Now, to be fair, in hindsight, the person who was involved in this was, for lack of a better term, you didn't know it at the time, but he was surrendering to you. Right?
That's quite possible, yes.
And can you just finish playing?
Correct.
Up from the car. Is that the point that you believed Officer Krieger had used the pepper spray?
Yes.
And at that point, you and or Officer Krieger told him to go home or something like that?
I don't recall anybody telling him to go home. The only commands I recall giving him were get out of the road and to stay back.
When you went to the hospital,
Did you see any videos of what had happened? Meaning any of the shootings?
I know that there were people that had videos playing on cell phones through, I'm not sure if it would be social media or what the websites would have been, but there were people that had videos of what was taking place on their phones, yes.
When you were at the hospital, did you become aware that the person that you had contact with right there was the shooter?
I was focused on preserving evidence with Mr. Rosenbaum and other tasks that I had to take place, so that was all in passing. I didn't focus much on what was taking place with that video.
Is there anything else you want?
Officer Reddy, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any
Officer, what is your sole focus as you're sitting in that squad car addressing the potential active shooter?
That if we were to come across a threat, to stop that threat, and if we weren't actively engaged with somebody that was a threat, to preserve life and find anybody that was injured and in need of medical assistance.
Now, in that video that was just shown, it showed that Officer Krieger was outside the squad car. Do you know how he was outside the squad car right before you backed up?
I don't remember him leaving our vehicle.
Can we play that exhibit again? Just play the whole thing. Yeah.
Hey, he just shot them. Hey, dude right here just shot them. Dude right here just shot all of them down there. That dude just shot them right there. That dude right here. Yeah.
Officer Krieger get out of he was behind the vehicle, kind of by the trunk area, and then jump in the passenger seat?
Yes, it appeared that he was exiting to retrieve something from our trunk.
Okay.
Attempting to retrieve something from the trunk, it appeared.
What kind of things do you have in the trunk?
That night we had medical supplies. I believe he had a type of ballistic vest that had plates in it that would have been more helpful for rifle rounds. And I don't recall if he had a rifle in the trunk that evening or not.
So it would be more helpful with rifle rounds, but perhaps not stop them?
Correct.
And you're talking about rifle rounds, you're talking about 223s fired from an AR-15 like the defendant had?
Correct.
Right. Thank you. Nothing further.
Let me step down. Is it for today?
Yeah.
Who wants to have a little early break today? Let's break for the day. Obviously, the standard rule, please don't discuss the case with anyone, not even with members of your household. Don't read, watch, or listen to anything to do with the trial, any account or anything else. Keep in mind what I told you the first day. You're welcome to tell people, people may know, who know you, know that you have been coming to the courthouse every day, so they may be aware, and you're welcome to tell people, you're on a jury. I'd rather you didn't if you can avoid it, but tell them you're on a jury, but just say the judge was very forceful in saying that I can't say anything about it at all, hear anything about it at all, or we'll both be in really big trouble. Perfect advice. With that, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you Monday at 9 a.m. And would you please go to the jury? You want to in the library or the jury room? Library? Jury room? Please go to the jury room and speak with Mrs. Mataska Menting. Thank you.